Welcome back, guys. This is Potter Fanfic Hub. Here we explore powerful Harry Potter what-if stories and hidden magic. What if Harry Potter discovered his parents' secret while hidden for 10 years? If you enjoy epic magical videos, subscribe to Potter Fanfic Hub. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1: The Forgotten Envelope. The summer of 1991 had been the worst of Harry Potter's life. That was saying something, considering he'd spent the previous 10 years enduring Dudley's fists, Vernon's bellowing, and Petunia's cold silences. But this summer felt different. Worse. Like the walls of number 4 Privet Drive were closing in on him with each passing day, the floral wallpaper peeling just a little more, the cupboard under the stairs feeling just a little smaller, the heat pressing down on Surrey like a suffocating blanket that refused to lift. Harry lay on his bed, his mattress on the floor of Dudley's second bedroom, staring at the ceiling and counting the cracks. 13. There were 13 hairline fractures in the plaster above him. He'd counted them every night for the past week. 14, if you counted the one near the light fixture that looked like a lightning bolt. Like his scar. His hand drifted up to his forehead, fingers tracing the familiar shape. He'd asked Aunt Petunia about it once years ago. She'd gone pale and refused to speak to him for 3 days. Uncle Vernon had called him a freak and locked him in the cupboard with only bread and water. He'd learned not to ask questions after that. The Dursleys were out today, something about Dudley's school shopping and a family lunch, at a restaurant that definitely didn't have room for Harry. They'd left him with a list of chores that would take until midnight to complete, and the usual threat of no dinner if he didn't finish. Harry didn't mind. An empty house meant peace. No Dudley shoving him into walls. No Vernon's face turning purple as he shouted about unnatural nonsense. No Petunia's pinched expression as she looked at him like he was something that had crawled out from under her pristine fridge. He sat up slowly, his joints aching from the summer heat and the thin mattress. His glasses were crooked again. Dudley had sat on them last week, and the tape holding them together was starting to give way. He pushed them up his nose and looked around the room. It was a strange room. Harry had never had his own space before. After the incident with the vanishing glass at the zoo, Uncle Vernon had panicked and moved him into the spare bedroom. Harry suspected it was less about kindness and more about keeping Harry away from the Dursleys' belongings. They'd filled the room with Dudley's old junk, broken toys, outgrown clothes, a television that didn't work. It was still better than the cupboard. But today, the room felt suffocating. The windows were locked, the door was bolted from the outside, and the summer heat made everything sticky and sour. Harry needed air. He needed to move. He needed to escape, if only for a few hours. He'd learned the art of escaping years ago. The Dursleys had installed bars on his window after the zoo incident, but they'd forgotten about the back door, the one that led to the garden, the one with the lock that was so old and rusted that a simple Alohomora. Harry froze. Where had that word come from? He shook his head. Strange things had been happening lately. Stranger than usual. The zoo incident, of course. But also that time he'd been running from Dudley and his gang and had found himself on the school roof without any memory of how he'd gotten there. And the terrible haircut that had grown back overnight. He didn't think about those things. Thinking about them made his head hurt and his scar prickle. Instead, Harry focused on the back door. He'd discovered years ago that the lock was faulty. If he jiggled it just right, it would pop open. The Dursleys had no idea. They never used the back door. They were front door people, the kind of family that entered through the proper entrance with the proper knock and proper expectations. Harry slipped out of the room and crept down the stairs. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a clock that had been in Petunia's family for generations and was probably the only thing in the house that Harry actually liked. He paused to look at it, studying the ornate wood carving, the Roman numerals, the steady rhythm of the pendulum. 10:32 in the morning. He had until at least 6 in the evening before the Dursleys returned. Plenty of time. The back door gave way with a familiar click, and Harry stepped out into the garden. The grass was brown and patchy from the heat, and Mrs. Next Door's cat, the one Dudley liked to chase, was sitting on the fence, watching him with suspicious yellow eyes. Harry ignored it and headed for the alley behind the garden. He'd never gone far before, just to the corner shop, maybe the park when Dudley wasn't there. But today felt different. Today, he wanted to walk. To disappear into the city and forget, for a few hours, that he was the unwanted nephew of the Dursleys. Surrey was its usual self, suburban, boring, unbearably normal. Cars drove past with families inside, children laughing in back seats, parents chatting about holidays and school and whatever normal people talked about. Harry watched them pass and felt the familiar ache in his chest. Not jealousy, exactly. More like wonder. What would it be like to be wanted? To be part of something? He kept walking. The hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Harry's throat was dry and his feet were sore, but he didn't want to stop. Not yet. There was something pulling him forward, something that felt almost like hope. That was a dangerous word. Harry didn't allow himself to hope. Hoping meant disappointment. Hoping meant the Dursleys would find some new way to remind him of what he was, a freak, a burden, a mistake. But the pulling feeling was undeniable. It tugged at something inside him, something warm and golden that he'd almost forgotten existed. By the time Harry looked up, he had no idea where he was. The neat rows of suburban houses had given way to something older, more mysterious. The buildings were crooked, leaning against each other like old friends after too many drinks. The shops were strange, a bookstore with windows so dusty you couldn't see inside, a pub with no name on its sign, a shop that appeared to be selling nothing but cauldrons. Cauldrons? Harry blinked. The shop was definitely selling cauldrons. Brass cauldrons, copper cauldrons, pewter cauldrons. They were displayed in the window like something out of a history textbook. That was when he saw the pub. It was tucked between a bookshop and a music store, almost invisible if you weren't looking for it. But Harry was looking. The sign above the door read, "The Leaky Cauldron," in faded gold letters, and there was something about it that made Harry's heart beat faster. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The pub was dim and smoky, filled with people who didn't look quite normal. A woman with a pointed hat. A man with what appeared to be a pig's tail poking out from under his coat. An old man in purple robes who was drinking something that gave off green sparks. Harry's scar prickled. He touched it instinctively, feeling the familiar tingle that he'd never been able to explain. "Are you lost, dearie?" Harry spun around. A woman was behind the bar, wiping a glass with a rag that looked older than she was. Her face was kind but lined, her eyes sharp and knowing. Harry hesitated. "I don't know how I got here." She tilted her head. "Happens more often than you'd think. The Leaky Cauldron has a way of finding people who need it." She paused, studying him. "What's your name, then?" Harry opened his mouth to lie, to say something ordinary, something Dursley approved, but the words wouldn't come. "Harry," he said instead. "Harry Potter." The pub went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward him. The man with the pig's tail dropped his drink. The woman in the pointed hat gasped. The old man in purple robes rose from his seat, his face pale with shock. "Harry Potter?" the barmaid whispered. "The Harry Potter?" Harry's scar throbbed. He backed away, his heart hammering. "I should go. I'm sorry." But the crowd surged forward. Hands reached for him. Voices called his name. Harry was surrounded, pulled into embraces and handshakes and tearful expressions of gratitude he didn't understand. "Thank you," someone shouted. "Thank you for stopping him." "The boy who lived," another voice cried. "He's alive." Harry's vision swam. The pub was spinning, the faces blurring together, the voices rising to a fever pitch. He needed air. He needed to escape. He needed to understand what was happening. And then a voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Let the boy breathe, for Merlin's sake." The crowd parted. A tall, stooped man was making his way through the crowd, his beard long and silver, his half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose. He wore a long purple cloak covered in silver stars, and when he reached Harry, he smiled, a warm, kindly smile that made Harry's terror recede slightly. "Harry," the man said, "it's good to see you again." Harry stared. I'm sorry, sir. I don't remember." "Of course you don't." The man chuckled. "You were only a baby when we last met. But I've been following your progress with great interest." He held out his hand. "Albus Dumbledore. I'm the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Harry shook his hand automatically, his mind reeling. "Witchcraft? Wizardry? I don't understand," he said. I'm just Harry." "No, my boy." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "You're much more than that. But this isn't the place for explanations. Come with me." Dumbledore led Harry through the pub, past the staring patrons, and out into a small courtyard behind the building. The courtyard was empty except for a dustbin and a few scraggly weeds, but Dumbledore was undeterred. He took out a wand, a real wand, made of wood and encased in something that glowed faintly, and tapped one of the bricks. The wall began to move. Harry watched in disbelief as the bricks rearranged themselves, forming an archway that opened onto a cobblestone street packed with people and shops and things that defied logic. There were flying brooms in the window of one store, cauldrons in another, a shop selling nothing but quills, each one enchanted to write by itself. "Welcome to Diagon Alley," Dumbledore said, his eyes still twinkling. "The entrance to the Wizarding World." The Wizarding World. Harry couldn't move. His legs felt weak, his brain refusing to process what he was seeing. Wizards. Witches. Magic. It was real. It was all real. He wasn't a freak. He wasn't a mistake. He was. "Harry?" Dumbledore's voice was gentle. "Are you all right?" Harry nodded, but his eyes were filled with tears. I thought I was broken. The things that happened to me, the strange things. I thought I was going mad." "Not mad at all," Dumbledore said. "You're a wizard, Harry. A powerful one, if I'm not mistaken. And today is your first step into a world that has been waiting for you." He paused, something flickering across his face, concern, perhaps, or wariness. "But first, there are some things you should know. About your parents. About how they died. About what happened that night." Harry's breath caught. His parents. He'd never heard anyone speak of them, not even as a whisper. The Dursleys refused to acknowledge they'd ever existed. It was like Harry had sprung from nowhere, a changeling left on their doorstep with no past and no future. "Please," he said. "Please tell me." And so Dumbledore did. He told Harry about James and Lily Potter, about their courage and kindness and love for their son. He told him about the war, about Lord Voldemort, about the prophecy that had marked Harry for a fate he still didn't understand. He told him about the night Harry had survived a killing curse, earning the scar on his forehead and a legend that would follow him for the rest of his life. By the time Dumbledore finished, Harry's legs had given out. He was sitting on the cobblestones, his back against a lamppost, his face wet with tears he hadn't realized he'd been crying. "They loved me?" he whispered. "My parents, they actually loved me?" "More than anything," Dumbledore said. "They gave their lives for you. That is the greatest gift a parent can give." Harry nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He'd dreamed of this moment, dreamed of knowing who his parents were, of understanding why he'd been left with the Dursleys, of finding a place where he truly belonged. But now that it was here, he felt overwhelmed. Grateful, yes. Overjoyed, even. But also afraid. If the Wizarding World was real, then the Dursleys had lied to him. They had hidden this from him. They had made him believe he was worthless when he was something precious. "Dumbledore," Harry said slowly. "My aunt and uncle, they never told me any of this. They said my parents died in a car crash. They said I was a burden, a freak, a mistake. Why would they lie?" Dumbledore's expression flickered again, that same wariness Harry had noticed before. That's a complicated question, my boy. One that I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer just yet. But there are certain protections that come with living with your aunt. Dumbledore's voice was gentle but firm. Your mother's sacrifice created a bond of blood that would protect you from dark magic. As long as you called Privet Drive home, as long as you stayed with your mother's blood, you were safe from Lord Voldemort and his followers. Harry frowned. But why didn't they tell me? Even if they didn't like me, couldn't they have at least told me what I really was? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something Harry couldn't identify. I think, Harry, that some people are so afraid of what they don't understand that they will do anything to suppress it. Your aunt and uncle were afraid of magic. They wanted to stamp it out of you, to make you normal by their standards. He sighed. I have made my share of mistakes in this matter. Perhaps I should have done more. The admission surprised Harry. Dumbledore seemed so confident, so certain of everything. But there was regret in his voice now, and something that might have been guilt. It's not your fault, Harry said, surprising himself. You were trying to protect me. Dumbledore looked at him sharply, his eyes piercing through his half-moon spectacles. You're remarkably forgiving for a boy who has been given so little. Harry shrugged. I've had a lot of practice. Dumbledore laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that made Harry feel like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. That you have, my boy. That you have. He helped Harry to his feet and brushed off his clothes. Now, I believe you have some shopping to do. Gringotts is just down the street. The goblins will help you access your family vault. And I highly recommend Ollivanders for your wand. The finest wand maker in the world. Harry's heart was pounding again, but this time it was with excitement, not fear. I have a vault? Real gold? Your parents left you well provided for, Dumbledore said. They would have wanted you to have everything you need for your education. Education. Hogwarts. He was going to a school of witchcraft and wizardry. He was going to learn magic. He was going to be among people like him, people who wouldn't call him a freak, or a mistake, or a burden. Harry wanted to scream with joy. He wanted to laugh until his sides hurt. He wanted to run down the street and hug every single person he passed. Instead, he walked. He walked to Gringotts, the white marble building that towered over Diagon Alley like a monument to everything he'd never known he was missing. He walked through the doors and found himself in a cavernous hall filled with goblins, creatures with sharp teeth and long fingers and eyes that seemed to see straight into his soul. Harry Potter, he said when one of the goblins asked his name. I'm here to access my family vault. The goblin's eyes widened. He exchanged a look with his colleagues, a look that Harry couldn't read. If you'll follow me, Mr. Potter, the goblin said. I think we need to have a private conversation. Harry hesitated. A private conversation? The goblin gestured with a long, knobby finger. There are certain irregularities with your family's accounts. Matters that have been outstanding for quite some time. Harry looked back at Dumbledore, who had followed him into the bank. The headmaster's expression was unreadable, but Harry could sense tension in his posture, a stiffness that hadn't been there before. It's all right, Dumbledore said, though his voice was strained. The goblins are trustworthy. They will help you. Harry nodded and followed the goblin down a long corridor, through a set of bronze doors, and into a small office lined with ledgers and scrolls. The goblin, his name was Grip Hook, Harry learned, sat behind a desk and gestured for Harry to take a seat. Mr. Potter, Grip Hook said, his voice raspy but precise, I must inform you that there are significant discrepancies in your family's financial records. The Potter Vault was sealed upon your parents' deaths in 1981, to be opened only upon your 11th birthday. However, there are matters that have never been addressed, matters that we believed were impossible until today. Harry's stomach dropped. What kind of matters? Grip Hook opened a drawer and pulled out an ancient-looking scroll, covered in symbols and seals that glowed faintly in the dim light. The original will of James and Lily Potter has been sealed in the deepest archives of Gringotts for the past 10 years. It was supposed to have been opened by a designated executor and carried out within months of their deaths. However, our records show that the will was never opened. It was lost. Hidden. Removed from public record. Harry's throat was dry. You mean someone stole it? Griphook's eyes glittered. That is a strong word, Mr. Potter. But not inaccurate. Someone certainly made sure that it would not be found. Until today. He unrolled the scroll and studied it. This will contain specific instructions for your guardianship, your inheritance, and your education. None of those instructions were ever carried out. Harry's head was spinning. But why? Why would someone do that? Gringotts does not speculate, Griphook said. We deal in facts. And the fact is that your parents' wishes were deliberately ignored. He paused, his eyes narrowing. However, there is something else. Something we discovered just this morning, when your blood triggered the magical seal on the will. He reached into a locked compartment in his desk and pulled out a small envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with wax that bore the emblem of a stag and a doe. It was addressed in elegant, flowing script to our son, Harry James Potter, open only by his hand. Harry's heart stopped. This was from his parents. A letter from his parents. They had written to him, had planned for him, had wanted him to know something important. And someone had hidden it away for 10 years. May I? Harry's voice cracked. May I open it? Griphook slid the envelope across the desk. It is yours by right, Mr. Potter. By law, by blood, by magic. He paused. But I must warn you, once you open it, once you activate the protective enchantments, certain chains of consequence will begin. People will learn that the will has been found. And some of them will not be happy about it. Harry's scar prickled again, a sharp, stabbing pain that made him gasp. He pressed his hand to his forehead, feeling the familiar burn that came with, what? Fear? Anger? Something else entirely? I don't care, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I need to know. I need to know what my parents wanted for me. Griphook nodded and stood, moving toward the door. I will give you privacy, Mr. Potter. Take your time. When you are ready, I will be nearby. The door closed behind him, and Harry was alone. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. He turned it over in his hands, studying the seal, the handwriting, the faint shimmer of magic that seemed to pulse from the parchment. His parents had touched this. His parents had written these words for him, imagining the day he would read them. And that day was now. Harry broke the seal. The letter unfolded itself, and a burst of golden light filled the room. For a moment, Harry couldn't see anything except the glow, warm, gentle, filled with something that felt like love. And then the light cleared, and Harry was looking at two figures that made his breath catch in his throat. A man and a woman. Young. Beautiful. Their eyes were warm, their smiles genuine, their hands intertwined like they were sharing a secret that only the two of them knew. The man had messy black hair that stuck up in exactly the same way Harry's did. He had the same green eyes, the same thin build, the same way of tilting his head when he was curious. The woman had long red hair that fell in waves over her shoulders, and when she smiled, her whole face seemed to light up from within. "Hello, Harry," the woman said. And Harry knew. He knew who they were. Even though he'd never seen their faces, never heard their voices, never known anything about them except what the Dursleys had kept hidden, he knew. "Mom?" he whispered. "Dad?" The man laughed, a warm, easy laugh that made Harry's heart ache. "We thought you'd figure it out, sport. Smart kid like. You. We've been waiting to meet you," the woman said. "We've been waiting for this moment for such a long time." Her voice trembled with emotion. "Oh, Harry. Look at you. You've grown so much. You look just like your father did at your age. But with better eyes," the man added with a wink. "He got those from you, Lily." Harry couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down his face, but he didn't care. He was watching his parents, his real parents, not the ghosts he'd imagined in his dreams, and they were looking at him with such love, such fierce pride, that he felt like his heart might burst. "I don't understand," he finally managed. "How are you doing this? You're not really here, are you?" The woman, Lily, shook her head. "This is a memory projection, Harry. A magical recording of our thoughts and feelings, left for you when you were ready to read it." She glanced at the man, James, and smiled. "We never wanted you to grow up without knowing us, sweetheart. We knew that there was a chance, a terrible chance, that something might happen to us. That's why we created this will, and this letter, and all the other protections we built for you. And that's why it's so important that you listen carefully," James added, his voice turning serious. "Because what we're about to tell you, it's going to change everything you thought you knew about the world." Harry leaned forward, his tears still falling but his attention fixed on his parents. "Tell me. Please. Tell me everything." Lily took a breath. "We knew that if something happened to us, you would need to be protected. We made specific plans, detailed plans, for your care and upbringing. We named your godfather, Sirius Black, as your legal guardian. If something happened to him, the guardianship was supposed to pass to Remus Lupin and Amelia Bones, a dear friend and a brilliant woman who serves on the Wizengamot. The Dursleys were never supposed to be your guardians," James said, and there was anger in his voice, a controlled fury that Harry had never heard from a living person. "We never wanted you to be raised by them. We knew what kind of people they were. We knew they wouldn't understand you, wouldn't accept you, wouldn't give you the love you deserve." Harry shook his head. "But Dumbledore said, he said I was safe with them. He said my mother's blood protection would keep me safe from dark magic." "It would have," Lily said softly. "It still does, Harry. That part was true. But we would have found another way to protect you. We would have built wards around a loving home, a home where you were wanted, cherished, and allowed to grow into your own magic. Not a home where you were hidden and treated like a burden." The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His parents had wanted him to be happy. They had planned for his happiness. And someone had taken that away from him. "Then what happened?" Harry asked. "Why didn't your will get followed? Why didn't Sirius get custody of me?" Lily and James exchanged a look that Harry couldn't read. "We don't know, Harry," James said finally. "Our memories, they stop at our deaths. We don't know what happened after. But we do know that something went wrong. Something terrible and deliberate. Someone," Lily said, her voice hard. "Some people took our will and hid it. They ignored our wishes. They took our son and gave him to people we would never have chosen for him. And they did it for reasons we can only guess at," James added. "Maybe it was politics. Maybe it was power. Maybe it was fear." His green eyes met Harry's. "Whatever it was, Harry, you have to be careful. There are people in the wizarding world who will want to use you, who will want to control you for their own ends. Your mother and I wanted you to be free. Free to make your own choices, free to be your own person, free to live your own life." The projection flickered, and Harry felt a surge of panic. "No, don't go. Please don't go yet. We're always with you, Harry," Lily said, her voice fading. "Always. And we love you. We love you more than anything in the world." James's face softened. "Be brave, son. Be loyal. Be kind. And above all, think for yourself. Never let anyone else decide who you're going to be." The golden light faded, and Harry was alone in the office with the letter in his hands and tears streaming down his face. He sat in the silence for a long time, trying to process everything he'd just learned. His parents loved him. His parents had wanted a future for him, a beautiful, bright future that had been stolen away. And now, 10 years later, he was finally learning the truth. But the truth was only the beginning. Harry looked down at the letter in his hands. The words were still there, glowing faintly with the same warmth that had filled the projection. And at the bottom of the page, there was a postscript that Harry hadn't noticed before, a single line in Lily's handwriting that made his blood run cold. P.S. We have reason to believe that someone will try to interfere with our plans for your future. If you are reading this, Harry, that means we were right. Be careful. Trust no one completely. And remember, the truth is always worth fighting for. Harry closed the letter and pressed it to his chest, feeling the magic pulse against his skin like a heartbeat. Someone had stolen his parents' will. Someone had hidden it for 10 years. Someone had taken his parents' carefully crafted plans and discarded them in favor of their own agenda. Who? And why? The door opened, and Griphook entered with a grim expression on his face. "Mr. Potter," he said, "I have troubling news. The magical seal on the will, it was keyed to your blood. When you opened it, an alert was sent to certain records. Within the hour, everyone who had a vested interest in keeping this will hidden will know that it has been found." Harry's jaw tightened. "Let them know," he said, and his voice was stronger than he felt. "Let them all know. I'm not going to hide anymore. Not from anyone." Griphook's eyes glittered with something that might have been respect. "Then I suggest we begin our work, Lord Potter. There is much to uncover, and time is not on our side." Harry nodded, his parents' letter still pressed to his chest. For the first time in his life, he was ready to fight. The walk back through Diagon Alley was a blur. Harry's mind was still racing, trying to process everything he'd learned from the letter and his parents' magical message. He barely noticed the witches and wizards staring at him as he passed, or the whispers that followed in his wake. All he could think about was the truth, and the lies that had been built on top of it. His parents had planned for him. They had wanted him to have a real family, a real home, a real future. And someone had taken that away from him. The Dursleys were part of it, but they were only pawns. There were others, powerful people who had made decisions about Harry's life without ever consulting him or respecting his parents' wishes. He looked at the letter in his hands, still glowing faintly, and felt a surge of determination. He would find out who had done this. He would hold them accountable. And he would make sure that no other child ever suffered the same fate, the fate of being hidden, of being kept in the dark, of being told they were worthless when they were worth everything. But first, he had to survive the next few hours. Dumbledore was waiting for him at the entrance to the Leaky Cauldron, his expression carefully neutral. "Harry," he said, "I heard what happened in Gringotts. Are you all right?" Harry met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something he hadn't noticed before, something almost like anxiety flickering behind the old wizard's gentle expression. "I'm fine," Harry said carefully. "Just a lot to take in." Dumbledore nodded. "I'm sure it is. Perhaps we should sit down and discuss." "There's nothing to discuss." Harry's voice was flat, emotionless. "I know what happened. Someone stole my parents' will. Someone kept it hidden for 10 years. And you..." He paused, the word catching in his throat. "You knew, didn't you? You knew the Dursleys weren't what my parents wanted." Dumbledore's face went pale. "Harry, don't," Harry said. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore." The old wizard was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew. I didn't know about the will, not the details, not the specific instructions your parents had laid out. But I knew the Dursleys were not what they would have wanted. I made choices, Harry. Choices I believed were necessary to protect you." "Protect me?" Harry's voice cracked with anger. "You put me with people who hated me. Who locked me in a cupboard and called me a freak and made me feel like I was worthless. There was no other way." Dumbledore's voice rose, and Harry was startled by the raw emotion in it. "The blood protection, your mother's love, it was the only thing standing between you and Lord Voldemort. As long as you called that place home, as long as you lived with her blood, you were safe. I would do it again. 1,000 times. Because you are worth protecting, Harry. You are worth every sacrifice, every difficult choice, every sleepless night I spent wondering if I'd done the right thing." Harry stared at him, something cracking inside his chest. He was still angry, so angry he could barely see straight. But there was also something else. Something that felt like understanding. You could have told me, he said finally, when I was old enough. You could have told me the truth. I was going to. Dumbledore's eyes were sad. Soon. But I waited too long, and someone else found you first. He paused. There are forces at work in this world, Harry, that even I do not fully understand. Forces that want you weak, dependent, controllable. I have made mistakes. I have trusted the wrong people. But I have always wanted what was best for you. Harry didn't know what to say. He was tired, overwhelmed, and still reeling from everything he'd learned. But he also understood, on some level, that Dumbledore was telling the truth, or at least the truth as he believed it. I need time, Harry said. To think. To process. Dumbledore nodded. Take all the time you need. But Harry. He reached out, touching Harry's shoulder with surprising gentleness. When you're ready, I will answer any question you have. I swear it. Harry looked at him for a long moment, trying to decide whether he believed him. I'll hold you to that, he said finally. And then he turned and walked away, his parents' letter pressed against his heart. The Dursleys' house was quiet when Harry returned. The sun had started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Harry of his mother's hair. He let himself in through the back door and crept up the stairs to his room, careful not to make a sound. Inside his room, he sat on the edge of his mattress and stared at the letter in his hands. The last traces of magical warmth were fading, but the words were still clear, his parents' words, written for him, meant for him, hidden away for a decade. He thought about what his father had said. Think for yourself. Never let anyone else decide who you're going to be. It was good advice. Powerful advice. But it was also terrifying advice, because it meant taking responsibility, taking control of his own life for the first time. No more waiting for the Dursleys to be kind. No more trusting Dumbledore to protect him. No more hoping that someone would come and save him. He had to save himself. Harry folded the letter carefully and tucked it inside his shirt, next to his heart. The parchment was warm against his skin, a constant reminder that he wasn't alone, that his parents were watching over him, even now, even from beyond the grave. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. There was no response, just the soft rustle of the parchment and the steady beating of his own heart. But Harry felt something, a warmth, a comfort, a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in years. The night passed slowly, but Harry didn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things he'd learned and all the questions he still had. Who had stolen the will? Who had hidden it? Who had decided that the Dursleys were the right choice for Harry's upbringing? And most importantly, how was he going to fight back? By the time the sun rose, Harry had made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for answers to come to him. He was going to find them himself. He was going to uncover every secret, expose every lie, and hold every person accountable who had ever wronged him or his family. Because his parents had loved him. They had fought for him. They had died for him. And now it was his turn to fight for them. Harry got up, dressed in his cleanest clothes, hand-me-downs from Dudley that were too big and falling apart, and walked down the stairs. The Dursleys were at the kitchen table, eating breakfast, but Harry ignored them. He walked past them, out the front door, and down the street toward the bus stop. Where do you think you're going? Uncle Vernon's voice bellowed after him. Harry didn't turn around. To find the truth, he said calmly. You wouldn't understand. And for the first time in his life, Harry Potter walked away from Privet Drive with his head held high and his heart full of purpose. The truth was out there. And he was going to find it, no matter what it cost him. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Lily and James speak again. The morning light crept through the grimy windows of the leaky cauldron, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor. Harry sat alone in a corner booth, his third cup of tea growing cold in front of him. He'd barely slept since leaving Privet Drive, had barely even closed his eyes. Every time he tried, he saw his parents' faces, heard their voices, felt the warmth of their magical presence fading into nothing. The letter was still tucked inside his shirt, pressed against his skin like a second heartbeat. He'd read it a dozen times since yesterday, tracing the words with his fingers, memorizing every loop and curl of his mother's handwriting. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. He needed more of them, more of their voices, more of the love they tried so desperately to send him across the void of death. The Leaky Cauldron's proprietor, Tom, had been kind to him. He'd given Harry a room for the night without asking for payment, claiming it was the least he could do for the boy who lived. Harry had accepted the charity gratefully, too exhausted to argue, but the name still sat wrong with him. He wasn't the boy who lived. He was Harry. Just Harry. A boy who'd spent 10 years believing he was worthless, only to discover he was worth everything to two people who were no longer alive to tell him so themselves. A shadow fell across his table. Mr. Potter. Harry looked up to find Griphook standing there, his face as unreadable as ever. The goblin wore the same severe robes as yesterday, and his long fingers were clasped behind his back in a pose of formal professionalism. "You're early," Harry said, surprised. "I thought we weren't meeting until noon." "Circumstances have changed." Griphook slid into the seat across from him, his movements precise and deliberate. "The alert I mentioned yesterday, the one triggered when you opened the will, has already begun to produce results. I have received no fewer than 7 inquiries from various ministry officials, all requesting access to your family's financial records." Harry's stomach tightened. "Did you give them anything?" "I am a goblin, Mr. Potter. I am bound by laws far older and more powerful than anything the Ministry of Magic has ever devised." Griphook's eyes glittered. "Dangerously. Your family's accounts are protected by ancient contracts that predate the ministry itself. No one, not the minister, not the Wisengamot, not even the chief warlock, can access them without your explicit permission." A strange sense of power washed over Harry. For the first time in his life, he had something that people wanted, something they couldn't take from him without his consent. "What about my parents' will?" he asked. "Can they demand to see it?" "The will is yours by right of blood." Griphook pulled a scroll from within his robes and unrolled it across the table. "This is a copy of the original document, transcribed by Gringotts' most trusted archivist. It contains the full text of your parents' wishes, including the magical protections they placed on it. Under goblin law, no one can compel you to produce it." Harry reached for the scroll, his fingers trembling slightly. "Can I read it? The full version, I mean?" "Of course." Griphook slid it toward him. "But I must warn you, the language of magical wills is deliberately complex. It was written to withstand legal challenges and magical tampering. You may find certain passages difficult to interpret without assistance." Harry nodded, already scanning the text. The handwriting was his father's. He recognized it from the letter's envelope, and it was messy, hurried, like James Potter had been running out of time when he'd written it. "I, James Fleamont Potter, of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." Harry's eyes skipped ahead, searching for the parts that mattered most. He found them quickly: the instructions for his guardianship, the provisions for his education, the detailed breakdown of the Potter fortune, and how it was to be managed until he came of age. But it was the section near the bottom that made him pause. "In the event of our deaths, our son, Harry James Potter, shall inherit the full sum of the Potter estate, including all monetary assets, properties, businesses, and magical artifacts. These assets shall be held in trust by Gringotts Bank until such time as Harry reaches his majority or, alternatively, until he demonstrates sufficient magical maturity to manage them himself." Magical maturity? Harry looked up at Griphook. "What does that mean?" Griphook's expression flickered. "It is an ancient provision, Mr. Potter, rarely used in modern times. It allows the heir to claim their inheritance before the legal majority if they can prove, through a series of magical tests, that they possess the wisdom and capability to manage it responsibly." Harry frowned. "But I'm only 11. How am I supposed to prove anything? You have already proven something, Mr. Potter. Griphook leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The will was sealed with a blood ward that only you could break. When you opened the letter, you triggered a series of magical responses that have been waiting for 10 years. Your parents knew, somehow, that they might not be there to guide you. They built contingencies into every layer of their planning. Harry's heart was pounding now. What kind of contingencies? Griphook reached into his robes again and produced a small, ornate box, carved from wood so dark it was almost black, inlaid with silver runes that seemed to shift and writhe in the dim light of the pub. This arrived at Gringotts this morning, addressed to you. It was sealed in a vault that has remained untouched since your parents' deaths. He slid the box across the table, and Harry felt a surge of warmth radiating from it, the same warmth he'd felt when he'd opened his parents' letter. The box recognized him. It had been waiting for him. Open it, Griphook urged. Your parents meant for you to have this when the time was right. Harry's hands shook as he reached for the box. The latch lifted easily, as if it had been waiting for his touch, and the lid swung open to reveal a collection of small vials, each one filled with a silvery liquid that seemed to glow from within. Memories. These were memories, the same kind his parents had used in their letter. But there were more of them here. Dozens of them, each one labeled with his mother's careful handwriting. Harry's first birthday. Remembering our Hogwarts years. James and Sirius, the early days. A promise for the future. And then, at the bottom of the box, a single vial that was larger than the others, its contents shimmering with an almost golden light. The label read, "To our son, Harry, open when you are ready." Harry swallowed hard. What are these? Memory projections, Griphook said. The same kind you experienced yesterday, but more complex. Your parents recorded these memories specifically for you. They wanted you to know them, really know them, beyond just the letter and the will. Harry lifted the largest vial carefully, feeling its warmth spread through his fingers. I want to watch them, he said. All of them. But I don't know how. The pub has a private room, Griphook interrupted. I have already arranged for it. You will have as much time as you need. He paused, something almost like kindness flickering in his eyes. Your parents were extraordinary people, Mr. Potter. I had the privilege of managing their accounts for many years. They loved you more than anything in their world. They would be very, very proud of you. Harry couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes too full of tears. He simply nodded and gathered the box into his arms, cradling it like the precious treasure it was. The private room at the Leaky Cauldron was small but comfortable, a single armchair facing a blank wall that had been enchanted to display magical projections. Harry settled into the chair, the box of vials on his lap, and took a deep breath. The first vial was labeled, Remembering Our Hogwarts Years. Harry uncorked it, and poured the silvery contents into the small basin that Griphook had provided. The liquid swirled and shimmered, and then the wall in front of him came alive with color and sound. He was looking at Hogwarts. The castle rose before him, impossibly beautiful, its towers and turrets gleaming in the golden light of sunset. The grounds stretched out in every direction, lush green lawns, a dark and mysterious forest, a lake that reflected the sky like a mirror. And there, at the edge of the lake, two figures were sitting together. His parents. Younger than he'd seen them in the letter, barely more than children themselves. His mother's hair was a vibrant red, catching the sunlight like flames. His father was laughing at something, his glasses askew, his messy hair even messier than Harry's. It's beautiful, isn't it? Lily's voice was soft, almost reverent. I still can't believe I'm here. I still can't believe any of this is real. James reached over and took her hand. It's real. You're real. And I'm never letting you go, Lily Evans. Never. She laughed, a sound like bells, bright and musical. You sound so sure of yourself, Potter. What if I decide to let you go? I'd follow you, he said simply. I'd follow you anywhere. Even if you told me to stop. Harry watched, transfixed, as his mother's expression softened. She leaned into James's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Anything. When we have children, when we have a family, we'll raise them right. We'll never make them feel like they're not wanted. We'll never make them feel like they're a burden." James pressed a kiss to her hair. "I promise. We'll give them everything we never had. Love, security, freedom to be whoever they want to be. And we'll teach them," Lily continued, her voice growing more intense. "We'll teach them about magic, about the world, about how to stand up for what's right. We won't let them grow up in the dark, not like we did." "You sound like you're already planning," James teased gently. "Because I am." She looked up at him, and there was fire in her green eyes, a fire that Harry recognized because he'd seen it in his own reflection. "I want to be ready. I want to be the kind of mother my daughter or son deserves." The projection flickered, and Harry was suddenly somewhere else, a small cottage, cozy and warm, filled with the scent of baking bread and something that might have been magic. A baby was crying in the next room, and Lily was rushing toward it, her face flushed with love and exhaustion. Shush, she murmured, lifting the child into her arms. "It's okay, little one. Mama's here." Harry's breath caught. That was him. That tiny, red-faced infant was him. "Look at you," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Look at what we made, James. Look at this perfect little person." James appeared in the doorway, his eyes soft and full of wonder. "He's going to be brave," he said. "And clever. And so loved." "He's going to be brilliant," Lily agreed. "And strong. And he's going to change the world, James. I can feel it. He's going to do incredible things." Harry pressed his hand to his mouth, trying to stifle the sob that was threatening to escape. This was real. This was his mother, holding him, loving him, dreaming of his future. This wasn't a story from Dumbledore or a theory from Griphook. This was the truth, pure and undeniable. The projection shifted again, and now Harry was watching his parents in what appeared to be a war council. They were older than in the previous memories, and there were lines of worry on their faces, shadows under their eyes. "We need to make plans," James was saying. "In case something happens to us. In case we don't make it through this." Lily's face was pale but determined. "Sirius will take care of Harry. He'll be the best guardian anyone could ask for." "And if Sirius isn't available?" James pressed. "If something happens to him too?" Lily was quiet for a moment. "Then we'll ask Remus. He's reliable, trustworthy, and he loves Harry almost as much as we do." "He'll be a werewolf," James said gently. "In a world that hates werewolves. Do you really want Harry to face that stigma?" Lily's jaw tightened. "I want Harry to have a guardian who will love him and protect him and never make him feel like a burden. Remus can do that. Remus will do that." She paused, her voice dropping. "Besides, the stigma doesn't matter. Love matters. Kindness matters. Remus has more of both than most people I know." James nodded slowly. "And if Remus can't take him? Then we'll leave him with Amelia Bones." Lily's voice was firm. "She's a good person, James. She'll fight for him, and she has the power and influence to protect him. I'd rather Harry be with someone who might not love him as much as we do, but who has the strength and resources to keep him safe." Harry leaned forward, his heart pounding. Amelia Bones. She'd been in his parents' letter too, the third option, the fallback plan. And whoever had hidden the will had ignored all three of them. "Your parents were wise," a voice said, and Harry looked up to find Griphook standing in the doorway. "They thought of everything, every contingency, every possible outcome. They loved you more than they loved their own lives." Harry nodded, unable to speak. His throat was too tight, his emotions too raw. He watched as the projection shifted again, and suddenly his parents were standing in a room that looked like a library, bookshelves covering every wall, a fire crackling in the hearth, and 2 chairs drawn up close together. "This is it," Lily said, holding up a large, leather-bound book. "This is the final draft of the will. Everything we've talked about, everything we've planned, it's all here." James took the book from her, flipping through its pages with a reverence that made Harry's chest ache. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "It will never be enough. No document, no amount of planning, can replace us." Lily reached out, touching his face gently. "I know. But it's the best we can do. It's the best gift we can give him, a chance to live the life we wanted for him." James closed the book and looked at her, his eyes full of love and sorrow. "Do you think he'll understand? When he reads this, do you think he'll know how much we loved him?" "He'll know," Lily promised. "Because I'm going to leave him something else, something that will speak louder than any will or any letter." Harry's attention sharpened. Another something? What was his mother talking about? But the projection was fading again, the images dissolving like mist in sunlight. Harry reached out instinctively, trying to hold on to them, trying to keep his parents' faces before him for just a moment longer. "Wait, I need to see more," he started, but Griphook shook his head. "Those were your parents' memories, Mr. Potter. The recordings they made. The projections will only show you what they wanted you to see." Harry's hands were shaking. "But that last one, she said something else. She said she was going to leave me something special. What was it? What did she leave me?" Griphook was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached into his robes and produced another vial, smaller than the others, but glowing with a brilliant golden light. "Your mother left this in a separate vault," he said. "One that she created without telling anyone, not even your father. It was sealed with her own magic, and it was keyed to open only when you asked the question you just asked." Harry stared at the vial. She knew I'd ask? "Your mother was one of the most brilliant witches of her generation," Griphook said softly. "She knew that the will wouldn't be enough. She knew that you would need more answers, more understanding, more of her love. So she created this." He handed the vial to Harry, and the warmth that flooded through his fingers was so intense that he almost dropped it. This was his mother's magic, pure and powerful, and filled with a love so vast that it seemed to fill the entire room. "How do I watch it?" Harry asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't watch it," Griphook said. "You enter it. This isn't a memory projection, Mr. Potter. This is something far more powerful, a magical immersion. Your mother created a space for you, a world where you can experience her love directly. But you must be ready. It will be intense." Harry didn't hesitate. "I'm ready. I've been ready my whole life." Griphook nodded and stepped back, giving Harry space. The vial seemed to pulse in his hand, its golden light growing brighter and brighter. Harry uncorked it, and a stream of liquid light poured out, wrapping around him like a cocoon. And then the world dissolved. He was in a garden. It was the most beautiful place Harry had ever seen, a riot of colors and scents, with flowers he'd never imagined and trees that seemed to sparkle with their own inner light. A fountain bubbled in the center of it all, its water silver and gold, and the sky above was a deep, impossible blue that seemed to go on forever. And there, sitting on a bench beside the fountain, was his mother. She looked exactly as she had in the other projections, red hair, green eyes, warm smile. But there was something different about her here. Something more real. When she looked at Harry, she seemed to see him, really see him, not just the image of him she'd imagined. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft and filled with love. "I've been waiting for you." Harry's legs gave out. He sank to his knees in the grass, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. His mother was here, in front of him, talking to him like he was the most precious thing in the world. "Oh, Harry!" Lily rose from the bench and crossed to him, kneeling in the grass to take his face in her hands. "My beautiful, brave boy. You've been through so much. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for you." She pulled him into her arms, and Harry felt her warmth, her love, the beating of her heart against his chest. This wasn't a memory, this was real as anything he'd ever experienced. His mother was holding him, and nothing else in the world mattered. "Mom," he choked out. "Mom, I miss you so much. I didn't know you loved me. They told me I was worthless, that I was a burden, that I was nothing. But you loved me. You really loved me." Lily pulled back, her own tears falling freely. "Of course I loved you. I love you more than life itself. I always have, and I always will." She cupped his face in her hands, her eyes searching his. "You are not worthless, Harry. You are not a burden. You are the greatest gift your father and I ever received. Do you understand me?" Harry nodded, too overcome to speak. Lily smiled, a bright, brilliant smile that lit up the entire garden. "Good. Because I have so much to tell you. So much to share. And I want you to listen, because this is important. This is what I wanted you to know." She led him to the bench beside the fountain, and they sat together, mother and son, in a garden that existed only in magic. "There's something I need to explain to you, Harry," she said. "Something about why I created this place, and why I didn't tell your father about it." She paused, her expression turning serious. "The night you were born, I had a vision, a prophecy of sorts. I saw you growing up, becoming powerful, fighting for what's right. But I also saw something else. I saw people trying to use you, control you, shape you into the person they wanted you to be, rather than the person you were meant to become." Harry's heart sank. "Dumbledore?" Lily shook her head slowly. "I don't know, Harry. I can't see the future clearly enough to name names. But I know that there are powerful people in the wizarding world who would do anything to get their hands on a child with your potential. And I know that they would lie to you, manipulate you, and sacrifice your happiness for their own ends." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. "That's why I created this. It's not a will, and it's not a memory. It's something else, something that exists outside of the magical laws and legal structures that people like Dumbledore could try to control." She handed the journal to Harry, and he felt its warmth spread through his hands. "What is it?" "Everything," she said simply. "Everything I ever knew about love, about magic, about protecting the people you care about. It's my legacy to you, Harry, not just material wealth or magical power, but the wisdom of a mother who wanted her son to be free." Harry clutched the journal to his chest. "I don't understand. How can a journal—" "Open it," Lily said gently. "Read the first page. Trust me, Harry." Harry opened the journal, and the words seemed to leap off the page, not just written words, but animated, magical words that moved and swirled like living things. "To my son, Harry, whom I love more than anything in this world, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I hope that you have had a happy childhood, but I suspect that might not be the case. I suspect that the people who are supposed to protect you have failed you in ways that I cannot imagine. And that is why I am writing this letter." Harry looked up at his mother, his eyes wide. "You know? You knew they'd fail me?" Lily's expression was pained. "I didn't know for sure. But I had fears, deep, terrible fears. I spent the last months of my life trying to prepare for every possibility, every outcome. And one of those possibilities was that you would grow up alone, unloved, and unaware of the truth. But why didn't you tell Dad? Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I was afraid." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Afraid of what James would do with the knowledge. Afraid of what Dumbledore would do. Afraid of starting a war that would put you in even more danger." She took Harry's hand, her grip firm and warm. "So I kept my secrets. I planned in secret. I prepared in secret. And I asked a few trusted people to help me, people who would never betray my confidence." Harry's mind was spinning. "Who? Who did you trust?" Lily smiled, and there was something almost sad in her eyes. "The goblins, for one. Gringotts High Council is bound by laws that no wizard can break. They kept my secrets because they had to. And there was someone else, someone who owed me a debt that could never be repaid. Who? A woman named Augusta Longbottom, Neville's grandmother. She was one of my closest friends, and she knew how important this was to me. She promised to protect you if anything happened to me and James. She promised to make sure you got the truth, no matter what. Neville Longbottom. The name was familiar. Dumbledore had mentioned him, a boy Harry's age who'd also survived Voldemort's attack. Harry filed the information away for later, his mind already racing with possibilities. I don't know if she succeeded, Lily continued. I don't know if she's even still alive. But I know she would have tried. She loved you, Harry. She loved you almost as much as I did. Harry was crying again, but he didn't care. His mother was telling him the truth that had been kept from him for 10 long years. And even though it was painful, even though it made him angry, it also made him feel something he'd never felt before. He was loved. He had always been loved. Mom, he said, his voice shaking. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Everyone wants something from me, the Ministry, Dumbledore, even the goblins. I don't know who to trust. Lily looked at him, her green eyes full of understanding. Trust yourself, Harry. Trust your instincts. You've survived this long, and you've done it alone. That takes courage, more courage than most people ever have. But what if I make a mistake? What if I trust the wrong person? Then you'll learn from it. She squeezed his hand. That's what being alive means. That's what being human means. You make mistakes, you learn, and you keep going. That's what your father and I always wanted for you, not perfection, but resilience. Not obedience, but independence. She stood up, pulling him with her, and wrapped her arms around him in a tight embrace. I love you, Harry. I have always loved you, and I will always love you. Nothing, not even death, can ever change that. I love you too, Mom. Harry buried his face in her shoulder, breathing in her scent, flowers and magic and something that was just her. I love you so much. I wish you could have been there. I wish I could have known you. I know, sweetheart. I know. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. But now you do know me. You know the truth about who I was and what I wanted for you. And that's the most important thing. That's what I wanted to give you. The garden began to fade, its colors growing dimmer, its sounds growing softer. Harry clutched his mother tighter, desperate to hold on to her. No, please don't go. I have to, Harry. Her voice was gentle, full of love. But I'll always be with you. In your heart, in your memories, in the magic I left behind. She pulled back, her eyes shining with tears. Be brave, my son. Be kind. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you're not enough. Because you are. You are more than enough. The garden dissolved completely, and Harry was back in the private room at the Leaky Cauldron, the journal clutched to his chest and tears streaming down his face. He sat there for a long time, not moving, not speaking, just breathing. The journal was warm in his hands, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. His mother's heartbeat. Her love, made tangible. Finally, he looked down at the journal and flipped to the first page. The words were still there, glowing faintly in the dim light. To my son, Harry, whom I love more than anything in this world. Harry read the entire letter, and then he read it again. And then he read the next letter, and the next, and the next. There were dozens of them, letters for every occasion, every milestone, every moment of his life that his mother had missed. Letters for his first day of school. Letters for his first crush. Letters for the times he would feel lost and alone. Letters for the moments of triumph and joy. Letters for everything. And at the very end, a single page that made Harry's heart stop. By the time you read this, you will have discovered the truth about the will. You will have learned that someone stole it, someone hid it, someone ignored my final wishes for your life. I can't tell you who that person is, Harry. I don't know for sure. But I can tell you how to find out. Harry's hands shook as he read the instructions. His mother had been brilliant, a witch so powerful and so clever that she'd built an entire magical investigation into the fabric of her own will. She'd left clues, safeguards, and protections that would help Harry uncover the truth about who had stolen his parents' legacy. And the first clue was in the will itself. Harry scrambled to his feet, the journal clutched in one hand, and rushed out of the private room. Griphook was waiting in the pub, his face unreadable. "Mr. Potter," he said, "I take it you found what you were looking for?" Harry nodded, his heart pounding. "I need to see the will again. The original, not the copy. There's something in it, something I missed the first time." Griphook's eyebrows rose. "You believe you know where to look?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "But my mother seems to think I can figure it out. She left me a clue." Griphook studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then we'd better go, Mr. Potter. Time is of the essence." The vaults of Gringotts were deeper than Harry remembered. Griphook led him through winding tunnels and past countless doors, each one guarded by enchantments that would have killed anyone who tried to force their way through. Finally, they arrived at a door that was smaller than the others, made of white marble that gleamed in the torchlight. "This is the Potter family's private archive," Griphook said. "It hasn't been opened since your parents' deaths. I had to get special permission from the High Council to access it." Harry swallowed hard. "Is it safe? Can I go in alone?" "The archive is keyed to your blood," Griphook said. "Only a Potter can enter. I will wait here." Harry took a deep breath and stepped forward, pressing his hand to the marble door. There was a pulse of warmth, a flicker of light, and then the door swung open, revealing a room that took Harry's breath away. It was like stepping into a museum dedicated entirely to his family. Portraits covered the walls, Potter ancestors, their painted eyes watching Harry with curiosity and recognition. Bookshelves lined every surface, filled with journals and scrolls and magical texts that seemed to whisper to each other in ancient languages. And in the center of the room, on a pedestal made of polished obsidian, was a single, pristine copy of his parents' will. Harry crossed the room slowly, his heart pounding. The will was bound in green leather, its pages glowing faintly with protective magic. He reached out and touched it, and the glow intensified, bathing his fingers in warm light. "Show me," he whispered. "Show me what my mother wanted me to find." The will opened on its own, its pages turning until they stopped at a section Harry had overlooked before. It was written in his mother's handwriting, not his father's, and it was hidden in plain sight, disguised as a mundane provision about property distribution. "Dear Harry," it began. "If you are reading this, then you have found the truth and you are ready to fight for it. I want you to know that I am so proud of you, prouder than I could ever say. And I want you to remember something: the people who stole your parents' will are still in power. They are still dangerous. And they will try to stop you from uncovering the full truth." Harry's eyes raced down the page. His mother had left him a list of names, people who had either helped cover up the theft or had known about it and done nothing. Some of them were familiar: Cornelius Fudge, Barty Crouch, Dolores Umbridge. Others were strangers to Harry, names he'd never heard before. And then, at the very bottom of the page, a single name that made Harry's blood run cold: Albus Dumbledore. Harry stared at the name, his mind refusing to process what he was reading. Dumbledore? The kindly old man who had helped him, guided him, brought him into the wizarding world? How could Dumbledore have been involved in this? But the journal was clear. His mother's words were clear. Dumbledore had known, perhaps not everything, perhaps not the full extent of the conspiracy, but he had known enough. And he had chosen to do nothing. Harry closed the will and stood there, breathing heavily, his mind reeling. He felt like the ground had shifted beneath him, like everything he thought he knew about the world had been turned upside down. "Mr. Potter?" Griphook's voice came from outside the door. "Are you all right?" Harry took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice was anything but steady. "I have everything I need." He pocketed the journal and walked back through the archive's door, his expression carefully blank. Griphook studied him, but said nothing. Now what? The goblin asked. Harry looked at him, and for the first time, he felt a surge of cold determination. Now, he said, I find out the truth. Every part of it. And I hold everyone accountable, no matter how powerful they are. The goblin nodded slowly. I will help you, Mr. Potter. For your parents' sake. For the sake of justice. Thank you. Harry's voice was hard. I'll need all the help I can get. As Griphook led him back through the tunnels of Gringotts, Harry clutched the journal to his chest and thought about his mother's words. She'd believed in him. She'd trusted him. And she'd given him the tools to fight back. He would not let her down. He would not let any of them down. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Guardians They Chose. The truth settled into Harry's bones like a slow-acting poison. For 3 days following his discovery in the Potter archive, he barely left his room at the Leaky Cauldron. He sat on the narrow bed, his mother's journal open on his lap, and read until his eyes burned and his head ached. The words blurred together sometimes, names, dates, legal references that made little sense, but the core message was always the same. His parents had planned everything. Every detail. Every contingency. And someone had destroyed it all. The journal's sections on guardianship were the most painful to read. Lily had written them with clinical precision, almost as if she'd known she was running out of time. Harry traced his finger over her handwriting, following the loops of her Gs and the sharp angles of her Ts, trying to imagine her sitting at a desk somewhere, trying to imagine the fear she must have felt as she wrote these words. If something happens to us, Harry, you must know that we had already chosen your guardians. We had papers drawn up, signed, and witnessed. We had plans in place for your care, your education, and your happiness. None of this was left to chance. We loved you too much for that. The names jumped off the page like they were alive. Sirius Black. Remus Lupin. Amelia Bones. Sirius Black. Harry had heard that name before, in whispers at the Leaky Cauldron, in hushed conversations between patrons who didn't realize he could hear. That Mad Black, they called him. The one who betrayed the Potters. The one who killed all those muggles. They spoke of him like he was a monster, a villain, a man who had destroyed everything he'd ever touched. But his mother's journal told a different story. Sirius is not what the world believes him to be, Lily had written. He would never betray us. He would never betray you. The night you were born, Harry, he held you in his arms and promised to protect you with his life. He called you his godson, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Harry's heart ached as he read those words. He'd never had anyone who loved him like that, not really. The Dursleys had tolerated him at best. Even Dumbledore, for all his kindness, had kept Harry at arm's length. But Sirius Black had loved him. Sirius Black had held him, promised to protect him, and then, what? He'd been imprisoned. He'd been sent to Azkaban without a trial. He'd been branded a traitor and a murderer, and no one, not even Dumbledore, had tried to save him. Harry looked at the journal again, at the next section his mother had written. If Sirius is not able to care for you, Harry, and I pray that he will be, but I must plan for every possibility, then the guardianship is to pass to Remus. Remus Lupin. He is your father's oldest friend, and he is one of the finest men I have ever known. He is kind, loyal, and brave. He will love you as his own. I know this with absolute certainty. Remus Lupin. The name was unfamiliar to Harry, but the way his mother wrote about him made his heart ache. He could feel her love for this man, her trust in him, her belief that he would be the right person to raise her son. Remus has a condition, Lily's journal continued. It is not his fault, and it does not define him. He is a werewolf, Harry. Yes, I know that word frightens people. It frightens many witches and wizards, and it will frighten you too, perhaps, when you learn what it means. But Remus is not dangerous. He is not a monster. He is a good man who was dealt a terrible hand, and he has spent his entire life trying to make the best of it. Werewolf. Harry's mind reeled. His parents had wanted to leave him with a werewolf? The Dursleys had always told him that werewolves were monsters, creatures of darkness and violence, capable of unspeakable acts. But his mother was so certain, so confident. "Remus will never hurt you," Lily wrote. "He would die before he let anyone harm you. That is the kind of man he is. And Harry, if you ever meet him, if you ever have the chance to know him, I hope you will see what I see. I hope you will see the friend who stayed by your father's side through everything. The man who helped us prepare for your arrival. The person who loved you even before you were born." Harry closed the journal and pressed it to his chest, tears pricking at his eyes. His mother had loved him so fiercely, so completely. She had built an entire world around him, a world of protection, love, and carefully chosen guardians. And someone had torn it all down. The third name was the one that made Harry pause. Amelia Bones. He'd heard of her too, in the whispers at the pub. She was a powerful figure in the ministry, a woman who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. She was strict, fair, and known for her unshakable commitment to justice. "Amelia is the third option," Lily had written. "She is not a close friend, not like Sirius or Remus. But she is someone I trust. She is someone who will fight for what is right, even when it is difficult. She has no children of her own, and I know she would love you as if you were her own. More importantly, she has the power and influence to protect you in ways that Sirius and Remus cannot." Harry thought about what that meant. His parents had known that they might not be there to protect him. They had known that the world was dangerous, that powerful enemies were closing in on them. And so they had built a safety net, a series of guardians who would catch him if they fell. But the net had been cut. Harry's hands clenched into fists. The anger was still there, burning in his chest like a fire that refused to die. But now there was something else too, something colder. More calculated. Determination. "I will find them," he whispered to the empty room. "I will find the people who did this. And I will make them pay." The next morning, Harry made a decision. He needed to see the full list of guardians. He needed to know exactly what his parents had intended, and he needed to see the legal documents that had been tampered with. Griphook had told him that the original documents were stored in the Potter archive, but Harry had been too overwhelmed to look at them before. Now he was ready. He walked through the streets of Diagon Alley with his head held high, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed him. The sun was bright, the streets were crowded, and for the first time in his life, Harry felt like he belonged somewhere. He was a wizard. He was Harry Potter, son of James and Lily, heir to a legacy that had been stolen from him. And he was going to reclaim it. Gringotts was busy when Harry arrived, packed with witches and wizards conducting their daily business. But Griphook was waiting for him at the entrance, his face as unreadable as ever. "Mr. Potter," he said, "I was expecting you. The High Council has authorized full access to your family's archives. They understand the seriousness of the situation." Harry nodded. "I need to see the guardianship documents. The originals, not the copies." Griphook's eyes glittered. "I thought you might. Follow me." They descended into the depths of Gringotts again, passing through corridors that Harry was beginning to recognize. The Potter archive was just as he remembered it, dusty, ancient, filled with the ghosts of his family's history. But this time, Harry knew exactly what he was looking for. The guardianship documents were stored in a separate vault, keyed specifically to Harry's blood. He pressed his hand to the lock, felt the familiar warmth of magic flooding through him, and stepped inside. The room was smaller than the main archive, but it was filled with stacks of parchment and leather-bound books. Harry moved through them carefully, searching for anything that mentioned guardianship, custody, or parental rights. And then he found it. A folder, thick with documents, labeled in his father's handwriting. Guardianship plans for Harry James Potter. Harry sat down on the floor and opened the folder, his hands shaking. Inside were dozens of documents, legal forms, magical contracts, letters from lawyers and witnesses. But the most important document was the one at the top, the official guardianship declaration, signed by James and Lily Potter and witnessed by 3 people Harry had never heard of. I, James Fleamont Potter, and I, Lily Jane Potter, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare that in the event of our deaths or incapacity, the guardianship and care of our son, Harry James Potter, shall be vested in the following individuals, in the following order of priority. Harry's eyes scanned down the page. There it was, just as his mother had written in her journal. Sirius Black, first in line. Remus Lupin, second. Amelia Bones, third. But then, at the very bottom of the page, there was a 4th name that Harry hadn't expected. Frank and Alice Longbottom. The Longbottoms. Neville's parents. Harry had heard about them in passing, whispers about a tragic attack, something that had left them permanently damaged. He'd never known they were meant to be his guardians too. He read the section carefully. His parents had written that the Longbottoms were to be the 4th option, the final safety net if everyone else was unavailable. They had known the Longbottoms well, had trusted them implicitly, had believed that they would raise Harry with love and kindness if the worst happened. And then Harry found the note at the bottom of the page, written in his mother's handwriting and dated just weeks before their deaths. Frank and Alice are wonderful people. But there is something wrong. Something is happening in the ministry. Frank has been acting strangely, paranoid, nervous. He keeps mentioning a plot, a conspiracy, something involving people we don't trust. James and I don't know what's going on, but we think it might be connected to the war. We have decided to keep Frank and Alice as a backup option, but we're worried. If something happens to them, Harry's guardianship will be reduced to Sirius, Remus, and Amelia. Harry's heart sank. The Longbottoms had been attacked, their minds shattered by dark magic, just days after the Potters died. And now Harry understood why. Someone had been destroying his parents' safety net, one guardian at a time. Sirius had been framed and imprisoned. The Longbottoms had been tortured into insanity. And only Remus and Amelia remained, 2 people who might still be able to protect Harry if anyone had bothered to ask them. But no one had asked? The will had been hidden, and Harry had been left with the Dursleys. Harry sat on the floor of the vault, the documents scattered around him, and felt the anger build again. It wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't just about his lost childhood, or his stolen legacy. It was about everyone his parents had trusted, everyone who had been caught in the crossfire of a conspiracy that Harry was only beginning to understand. He gathered the documents carefully and stuffed them into his bag. He would read them later, study them, memorize every detail. For now, he had to get back to the surface and start his investigation. Griphook was waiting for him at the exit to the archive. You found what you were looking for? I found more than I expected. Harry's voice was flat, emotionless. My parents had 4 guardians planned. 4 people who were supposed to protect me if they died. And 3 of them were neutralized somehow. Griphook's expression was unreadable. The Longbottoms are still alive. They are being treated at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies. Their condition has not improved in 10 years. Harry nodded. Slowly. And Remus? Is he still alive? I believe so. Griphook paused. But he has kept a low profile for many years. He is not the kind of person who seeks attention. Harry thought for a moment. I need to find him. I need to talk to him. He was supposed to be my guardian if Sirius couldn't take me. He deserves to know the truth. Griphook's eyes narrowed. Finding Remus Lupin will not be easy. He has not been seen in Wizarding Society for years. But there are ways to track him down, if you are willing to use them. I'm willing. Harry's voice was firm. Whatever it takes. Griphook nodded and led Harry back to the main hall of Gringotts. The crowds had thinned out since Harry's arrival, and the vast space felt almost empty. Harry walked through the marble columns, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. But something made him stop. There was a man standing near the entrance to Gringotts, a man in shabby robes, with graying hair and tired eyes. He was looking at Harry with an expression of desperate hope, like he'd been waiting for this moment for years. Harry's heart lurched. He didn't know this man's face, but something about him was familiar. Something in the way he stood, the way he held himself, the way his eyes seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 regrets. Harry? The man's voice was barely a whisper. Harry Potter? Harry stepped forward cautiously. Yes? Who are you? The man's face crumpled. Tears welled in his eyes, and he took a shaky step forward. My name is Remus, he said. Remus Lupin. I was supposed to be your guardian. I was supposed to protect you. Harry stared at him, unable to speak. This was Remus? This broken, desperate man was the person his mother had trusted so completely? The person she'd written about with such love and admiration? I know who you are, Harry said finally. My mother wrote about you. She said you were one of her closest friends. Remus let out a choked sob. Lily. Lily she was everything. She was the best person I ever knew. And I failed her. I failed her so badly. He reached out, his hand trembling, as if he wanted to touch Harry but was too afraid. I'm so sorry, Harry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. I didn't know. I didn't know about the will. I didn't know about any of it. Harry's heart ached for him. This was not a man who had abandoned him. This was a man who had been kept in the dark, just like Harry. Please, Harry said, taking Remus's hand in his own. Please don't apologize. It's not your fault. He paused, his voice growing stronger. But I need you to tell me everything. Everything you know about what happened to my parents, to Sirius, to the will. I need the truth. Remus nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'll tell you everything, he said. Everything I know. I promise, Harry, I promise I won't keep any more secrets from you. They sat in a private booth at the Leaky Cauldron, away from the prying eyes and curious whispers of the other patrons. Harry ordered tea for both of them, and they sat in silence for a long moment, each of them trying to find the right words. I should have been there, Remus said finally. That night. Halloween night. I should have been at Godric's Hollow, protecting you. But I wasn't. I was on a mission for the Order of the Phoenix. A mission that turned out to be a trap. I spent the next year trying to find out what happened to you, but no one would tell me. Dumbledore said you were safe, but he wouldn't say where. Harry felt the anger stir again. Dumbledore. He knew about the Dursleys. He knew they were abusing me. He knew my parents had been ignored, and he did nothing. Remus's face was pained. I don't know how much he knew, Harry. I can't believe he would have deliberately left you in that situation. But I also can't believe he didn't know something was wrong. He's too clever, too connected, to have missed all of it. Then why? Harry's voice was sharp. Why would he let it happen? Remus was silent for a long moment. I think, he said slowly, that Dumbledore made a choice. I think he believed, rightly or wrongly, that you would be safer with your aunt and uncle than anywhere else. I think he believed the blood protection was more important than anything else, more important than your happiness, more important than your parents' wishes. Harry shook his head. That's not an excuse. That's not a justification. No, Remus agreed. It's not. But it's the truth as I understand it. He looked at Harry, his eyes full of sorrow. I should have questioned him. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded to see you, to make sure you were safe. But I was so broken, Harry. So lost. I'd lost James. I'd lost Lily. I'd lost Sirius. I didn't know how to go on. Harry reached across the table and took Remus's hand. You're here now, he said. That's what matters. And I need you, Remus. I need your help. There are people who did this to us, people who destroyed our families. And I'm going to find them and hold them accountable. Remus's expression shifted. The sorrow didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else, a fierce protectiveness that Harry recognized from his mother's writings. I will help you, Harry. I will do whatever it takes to help you find the truth. The hours passed as Remus told Harry everything he knew. He spoke about Sirius, about the friend who had been more like a brother than a friend. He told Harry about the Marauders, about their adventures at Hogwarts, about the pranks they'd pulled and the rules they'd broken. He told Harry about James's loyalty, his bravery, his fierce love for his friends. He would have done anything for Sirius, Remus said. Anything. And Sirius would have done anything for him. That's why it was so terrible when Sirius was accused. I couldn't believe it. I refused to believe it. But there was no evidence to prove his innocence, and everyone else had already condemned him. Harry's blood ran cold. He didn't have a trial? No. Remus's voice was bitter. They threw him in Azkaban without a hearing. The Ministry was so desperate to find someone to blame, and Sirius was the easiest target. He was James's best friend. He was the secret keeper. Everyone assumed he had betrayed the Potters. But he didn't, Harry said firmly. He couldn't have. My mother trusted him. My father trusted him. If they believed in him, then I believe in him. Remus looked at Harry with something like wonder. You sound just like James, he said. He never gave up on anyone. He always believed the best of people. Harry felt a surge of pride. I'm going to get him out. I'm going to prove his innocence and get him out of Azkaban. Remus's eyes widened. Harry, that's impossible. No one has ever escaped from Azkaban. The Dementors. I don't care. Harry's voice was hard. My parents trusted Sirius with my life. He deserves to be free. Remus studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. You're right, he said. He does. And I'll help you. Whatever it takes. Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore. He had Remus, someone who understood, someone who cared, someone who had loved his parents as much as he did. But there was still so much he didn't know. So many questions that needed answers. What about Amelia Bones? Harry asked. Do you know her? Remus nodded. She's a good woman. Fair, just, and fiercely protective of the innocent. She was devastated when she found out what had happened to you. She tried to investigate, tried to get custody of you, but she was blocked at every turn. Blocked by who? Remus's expression darkened. I don't know for sure. But Amelia has always suspected that someone high up in the Ministry was involved. Someone with a lot of power and influence. Harry's mind was racing. Do you think she'll help me? If I ask her directly? I think she might. Remus paused. But you have to be careful, Harry. Amelia is a powerful woman, but she has enemies. If she helps you too openly, she could be putting herself at risk. Harry nodded slowly. I understand. But I have to try. She was one of my parents' choices. She deserves to know the truth. The conversation continued late into the night. Remus told Harry about the war, about the terror that had gripped the wizarding world, about the families that had been torn apart by Voldemort's reign of terror. He spoke of his own struggles, the loneliness of being a werewolf, the constant fear of being discovered, the way he'd been shunned and marginalized his entire life. It's not easy being different, Remus said quietly. You know that better than most, Harry. The Dursleys made sure of that. Harry nodded. They called me a freak. They made me feel like there was something wrong with me, something broken. But there's nothing wrong with you. Remus's voice was fierce. You are not broken, Harry. You are extraordinary. Your parents knew it. I know it. And one day, the rest of the world will know it too. Harry's throat tightened. Thank you, Remus. I needed to hear that. They fell silent again, sitting in the dim light of the pub, each lost in their own thoughts. The night had grown cold, and the fire in the hearth had burned low. Harry could feel exhaustion creeping up on him, but he didn't want to sleep. There was too much to do, too much to plan. I've been thinking, Remus said finally. About the will. About what happened to it? Harry looked up. What about it? Whoever hid it, they had access to the Ministry's records. They were powerful enough to remove a legally binding document without anyone noticing. Remus paused. That narrows the list of suspects considerably. Harry's heart was pounding. Dumbledore. Remus shook his head. I don't think so. Dumbledore has influence, but he doesn't control the Ministry. He couldn't have done it alone. Then who? Remus was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. But I have a theory. There are people in the Ministry, powerful people, who have always been afraid of your parents' legacy. They were afraid of James's influence, Lily's brilliance, the Potter family's wealth. And they were afraid of what would happen if you inherited all of that. Harry's eyes narrowed. They wanted to control me. Keep me weak and powerless. Exactly. Remus's voice was grim. And they nearly succeeded. But now you have the truth. Now you have your parents' will. And that changes everything. Harry stood up, his heart pounding with determination. Then I won't give them a chance to succeed again. I will reclaim my parents' legacy. I will rebuild House Potter. And I will make sure that everyone who tried to destroy my family faces justice. Remus looked at him, and in his eyes, Harry saw a reflection of his father's spirit, the same fierce loyalty, the same unshakable courage. I'll be with you, Harry, he said. Every step of the way. Harry nodded, too moved to speak. For the first time in his life, he truly felt like he had a family. The next morning, Harry made a decision. He was going to find Sirius Black. It was a dangerous plan, possibly suicidal, but Harry didn't care. Sirius had been wrongfully imprisoned, his life stolen by the same people who had stolen Harry's childhood. And if Harry had learned anything from his parents' memories, it was that family was worth fighting for. Remus tried to talk him out of it. Azkaban is impossible to penetrate, he argued. The Dementors will attack anyone who gets too close. They'll drain your soul, Harry. I don't care. Harry's voice was calm. Sirius is my godfather. He was my parents' choice. And I'm going to get him out. Remus studied him, his expression shifting from fear to resignation. You have your father's stubbornness, he said finally. And your mother's courage. I'm not going to be able to stop you, am I? Harry shook his head. No. You're not. Remus sighed. Then at least let me help you. I can't come with you, I'd be recognized, and it would raise too many questions. But I can give you information, supplies, whatever you need. Harry smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in days. Thank you, Remus. Remus reached out and placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Your parents would be so proud of you, he said. So incredibly proud. Harry felt tears prick at his eyes, but he blinked them back. I'll make them proud, he promised. I'll make sure their legacy lives on. The weeks that followed were a blur of planning and preparation. Harry spent hours in Gringotts, studying the archives, learning everything he could about Azkaban and its defenses. Remus taught him defensive spells and survival techniques, preparing him for the dangers that lay ahead. And through it all, Harry carried his parents' letters and memories with him, drawing strength from their love. The night before he left, Harry sat in his room at the Leaky Cauldron and opened his mother's journal to the final page. The words were written in her most careful handwriting, as if she'd been saving them for a moment exactly like this. My dearest Harry, it began. If you are reading this, then you have decided to fight. You have decided to reclaim your legacy and stand up to the people who tried to destroy our family. I want you to know that I am so proud of you. So incredibly proud. I have always believed in you, Harry. I have always known that you would do great things. But great things don't come easily. They come with sacrifice, pain, and loss. They come with the willingness to stand up when everyone else is sitting down. And that, my darling son, is what makes you extraordinary. Go, Harry. Fight for your family. Fight for your future. And never, ever forget that you are loved. You are loved beyond measure, and nothing, Not even death can ever change that. Harry closed the journal and pressed it to his chest, tears streaming down his face. He was ready. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Missing Inheritance. The morning light was pale and cold when Harry left the leaky cauldron for what he knew would be the last time in a while. He packed everything he owned into a single small bag: his mother's journal, the letters, the memory vials, and a few changes of clothes that Remus had helped him acquire. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Everything else he needed would come from Gringotts. Remus had gone ahead to secure a safe house on the outskirts of London, a place where they could regroup after Harry's mission to Azkaban. It was strange to think that he'd known Remus for less than a week. Already, the man felt like family, like the father Harry had never had, the protector his parents had chosen for him. But there was one thing Harry had to do before he left. He had to claim his inheritance. Griphook was waiting for him at the entrance to Gringotts, his expression more serious than usual. "Mr. Potter," he said, his voice low, "the High Council has been discussing your case. There have been developments." Harry's stomach tightened. "What kind of developments?" "Several parties have petitioned the bank for access to your family's accounts. They claim that as a minor, you are not legally capable of managing the Potter fortune on your own." Harry's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Griphook's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "The Ministry of Magic. The Wizengamot. And Albus Dumbledore." Harry felt the anger flare in his chest. Dumbledore. Again. The man who had kept Harry in the dark for 10 years, who had left him with the Dursleys despite knowing his parents' wishes. Now he wanted to control Harry's inheritance too. "They can't have it," Harry said flatly. "It's mine. My parents left it to me." "Under normal circumstances, you would be correct." Griphook's voice was measured, careful. "However, there is a complication. The will states that you must demonstrate magical maturity before you can access the full extent of your inheritance. Until that time, the assets are held in trust by Gringotts." Harry's heart sank. "How do I prove magical maturity?" "There are tests," Griphook said. "Ancient rituals that require the heir to demonstrate control over their magic, knowledge of their family's history, and a willingness to accept the responsibilities of their legacy." He paused. "But there is another way. A faster way." Harry leaned forward. "Tell me." "The will contains a clause, a secret clause that only you can activate. It requires you to visit the Potter family vault and claim the inheritance in person. If you can open the vault without assistance, the magical seals will recognize you as the rightful heir, and the inheritance will be yours immediately." Harry's heart was pounding. "When can we do this?" Griphook's eyes glittered. "Now, Mr. Potter. If you are ready." Harry didn't hesitate. "I'm ready." The descent into the deepest vaults of Gringotts was longer than Harry remembered. The cart careened through tunnels that grew darker and narrower as they went, until the torchlight seemed to flicker and die, replaced by a faint blue glow that pulsed from the walls themselves. "This is the oldest part of the bank," Griphook explained. "The vaults here predate the Ministry by centuries. They were built by the founders of Gringotts, using magic that has long since been forgotten." Harry peered into the darkness. "What's down here?" "Family vaults. Ancient treasures. Things that even the goblins do not fully understand." Griphook's voice was low, almost reverent. "Your family's vault is one of the oldest in existence. It was built by your ancestor, Linfred Potter, the first recorded Potter, known as the Potter for his skill with potions." The cart finally ground to a halt in front of a massive door made of obsidian, blacker than black, reflecting no light, seeming to absorb the very air around it. Harry's heart was hammering as he stepped out of the cart and approached the door. "Place your hand on the seal," Griphook instructed. "The vault will recognize your bloodline." Harry pressed his palm to the smooth, cold surface of the door. For a moment, nothing happened. And then the obsidian began to pulse with a warm, golden light, exactly like the light from his mother's journal. Symbols appeared on the surface, ancient runes that Harry didn't recognize, and then the door swung open, revealing a space that took Harry's breath away. The Potter family vault was enormous. It stretched beyond the limits of Harry's vision, filled with mountains of gold coins, glittering jewels, and treasures that seemed to hum with their own magical energy. There were weapons on the walls, swords and daggers that gleamed with enchanted light. Bookshelves filled with ancient texts. Portrait after portrait of Potters from centuries past, their painted eyes following Harry as he stepped inside. And in the center of the vault, on a pedestal made of white marble, was a single object that drew Harry's attention immediately. A crown. It was made of silver and gold, entwined together in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move as Harry watched. Gemstones of every color sparkled along its surface, and at its center, a single emerald pulsed with a light that matched Harry's eyes. "Go ahead," Griphook said softly. "It's yours." Harry walked forward, his steps echoing in the vast, silent space. He reached out and touched the crown, and a shock of magic shot through his body, filling him with warmth and power and a sense of rightness he'd never felt before. The crown lifted from the pedestal and settled onto his head of its own accord. For a moment, Harry felt like he was drowning in light, gold and silver and green, swirling around him, filling every corner of his being. And then it was over, and Harry was still standing in the vault. But everything was different. He could see things he hadn't seen before. The magic in the vault was visible to him now, flowing through the walls like rivers of light. He could feel the presence of his ancestors, their spirits watching him with pride and approval. And he knew, just knew, that he had claimed his inheritance. "The crown of House Potter," Griphook said, his voice filled with something that might have been wonder. "It has not been worn in 300 years. It recognizes you as the true heir." Harry reached up and touched the crown on his head. It was warm against his skin, like a permanent embrace. "What does it do?" "It connects you to the legacy of your family," Griphook said. "It gives you access to the knowledge and power of every Potter who came before you. And it proves beyond any doubt that you are the rightful lord of this house." Harry looked around the vault, seeing it with new eyes. Mountains of gold. Priceless artifacts. Centuries of accumulated wealth and power. It was his now, all of it, and it had been stolen from him for 10 years. But the crown wasn't the only thing that the vault contained. Harry walked deeper into the vault, following a pull that he couldn't explain. The magic of the crown was guiding him, showing him where to go. He passed shelves of enchanted weapons, cases of jewelry that sparkled with their own inner light, and finally came to a corner of the vault that was hidden from view. There, stacked in a neat pile, were documents. Harry knelt down and began to read. They were financial records, business contracts, real estate deeds, all of them related to the Potter family's wealth. But there was something more. Something that made Harry's blood run cold. These documents showed that the Potter fortune had been systematically drained over the past decade. Every year, significant sums of money had been withdrawn from the family accounts. Some of the transactions were labeled as trustee fees and administrative costs. Others were simply listed as authorized transfers, with no explanation at all. And all of them had been approved by a single name: Albus Dumbledore. Harry's hands shook as he read the documents. Dumbledore had been accessing the Potter fortune for 10 years. He'd been withdrawing money, spending it on things that Harry couldn't identify. And he'd done it all without Harry's knowledge or consent. "He was supposed to be protecting me," Harry whispered. "He was supposed to be keeping my inheritance safe." Griphook had followed him into the corner of the vault. When he saw the documents, his expression darkened. "This is worse than I feared," he said. "The Ministry believed that Dumbledore was acting as your guardian. He had legal authority to access your accounts. But he wasn't my guardian." Harry's voice was hard. "My parents chose Sirius. They chose Remus. They chose Amelia. They never chose Dumbledore. Legally, the authority to manage your accounts would have fallen to the person who was designated as your guardian. Since the will was never opened, the Ministry appointed Dumbledore to act as your magical guardian until you came of age." Harry clenched his fists. He took advantage of me. He took advantage of my parents' deaths. He began to go through the documents more carefully, looking for any clue about where the money had gone. There were payments to St. Mungo's, to various orphanages, to organizations that Harry didn't recognize. But there were also payments to individuals, ministry officials, politicians, people who had somehow managed to benefit from the Potter fortune. I need to see all of these, Harry said. Every single transaction. Griphook nodded. I will have copies made for you. But Mr. Potter. He paused, his voice dropping. There is something else you need to know. Harry looked up. What? The will also contain provisions for your education. Your parents set aside a significant amount of money for your schooling, your books, your supplies. But those funds have also been redirected. Harry's eyes widened. Redirected where? The transactions are complicated, Griphook admitted. But it appears that Dumbledore used your educational funds to pay for certain research projects at Hogwarts. Projects that benefited him personally. Harry felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His parents had planned for his education. They had set aside money so that he would never have to worry about anything. And Dumbledore had taken it. I need to confront him, Harry said. I need to know why. Griphook shook his head. That would not be wise, Mr. Potter. Not yet. You are still too vulnerable, too easy to silence. If you confront Dumbledore now, he will find a way to discredit you, to make you seem like an ungrateful child. Harry's anger was boiling over. So what do I do? Just let him get away with it. No. Griphook's eyes glittered. You gather evidence. You build your case. And when the time is right, you strike. Harry nodded slowly, forcing himself to think clearly. Griphook was right. Rushing in without a plan would only make things worse. He needed to be patient. He needed to be smart. Show me the rest of the vault, he said finally. I need to know everything that belongs to my family. The next hour was a revelation. The Potter family vault contained not just wealth, but a history that Harry had never known existed. There were portraits of his ancestors, each one accompanied by a book that detailed their lives and accomplishments. There were magical artifacts that had been passed down for generations, a cloak that was invisible to the naked eye, a wand that had been crafted by the founders of Hogwarts, a set of books that contained the secrets of ancient and powerful magic. But the most valuable thing in the vault was a single journal, bound in dragon hide, that was labeled simply, The Potter Legacy. Harry opened the journal and began to read. It was a history of his family, a record of everything they had done, everything they had achieved, everything they had sacrificed. His ancestors had been warriors, healers, inventors, and leaders. They had fought in wars, built businesses, and established traditions that had lasted for centuries. And at the very back of the journal, Harry found a section that made his heart stop. To my son, Harry, when you are old enough to understand. It was his father's handwriting, messy and rushed, but filled with love and urgency. There are things I haven't told you, Harry. Things I was too afraid to say. But if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you deserve to know the truth. The Potter family was always more than just a wealthy name. We were protectors. Guardians of magic that was too powerful to be trusted to anyone else. Your mother and I are part of that tradition, and we hope that one day, you will be too. There are people in the wizarding world who will try to use you, Harry. People who will want your power, your wealth, your legacy. You must be careful. Trust your instincts. Trust your heart. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you are not enough. Because you are more than enough. You are a Potter, and that means you are part of something that is greater than yourself. Harry closed the journal and pressed it to his chest, tears streaming down his face. I'll make you proud, he whispered. I promise. The cart ride back to the surface was silent. Harry was still processing everything he'd discovered in the vault. The theft of his inheritance, Dumbledore's betrayal, and the weight of his family's legacy. When they reached the main hall, Griphook pulled him aside. Mr. Potter, there is one more thing. I have received word from the High Council. They have agreed to open an official investigation into the theft of your parents' will and the mismanagement of your inheritance. Harry looked up, hope flaring in his chest. Really? Really? Griphook's voice was calm. The goblins take such matters very seriously. Whoever tampered with your family's documents has violated some of the oldest laws in magical history. They will be held accountable. Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. Your parents were good friends to our people, Griphook said. They respected us, treated us as equals. That is rare among wizards. We will not forget it. Harry nodded, too moved to speak. The rest of the morning was a blur of activity. Harry met with bankers, filled out documents, and made arrangements for his financial affairs to be managed properly. He authorized Remus and Amelia Bones to have limited access to his accounts, ensuring that someone he trusted could help him keep track of his inheritance. But when he tried to contact Amelia, he hit a wall. She's been called away on ministry business, a clerk told him. It might be a few weeks before she's available. Harry's instincts prickled. What kind of ministry business? I'm not at liberty to say. The clerk's face was carefully blank. But I'm sure she'll be in touch when she can. Harry left the ministry building, his mind racing. Amelia Bones had been one of his parents' chosen guardians. She tried to investigate the theft of the will, and she'd been blocked at every turn. Now she was suddenly unavailable, just when Harry needed her most. He walked through the streets of London, trying to make sense of everything. The pieces were starting to come together, but there were still gaps, dark spaces where the truth was hiding. Mr. Potter? Harry turned around. A man was standing behind him, young, well-dressed, with an expression of practiced neutrality. My name is William Weasley, he said. I've been sent to find you. There's something you need to see. Harry's caution flared. Why should I trust you? Because your mother was my mother's best friend, William said. And because I'm here to take you to someone who can help you. Harry studied him for a moment. There was something genuine in the man's eyes, something that reminded Harry of the warmth he'd felt in his mother's memories. Who? Someone who knew your parents well. Someone who can tell you the truth about what happened to your inheritance. Harry's heart was pounding. Take me to him. William nodded and led Harry through the streets, past buildings that grew older and more worn, until they came to a small, nondescript house tucked away in a quiet corner of London. The door opened as they approached, and Harry found himself looking at a woman who made his breath catch. She was older than his mother would have been, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with worry and weariness. But her eyes were the same. Bright green, full of life, just like his mother's. Harry, she said, her voice choked with emotion. Harry, I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you. I should have fought harder. Harry's throat was tight. Who are you? I'm Alice Longbottom, she said. I was your mother's closest friend. And I was supposed to be your godmother. The next hour was one of the most painful of Harry's life. Alice Longbottom told him the story of what had happened to her and Frank. She told him about the attack, about the dark wizards who had broken into their home and used the Cruciatus curse on them, torturing them, trying to find out where the Potters were hiding. I couldn't tell them, Alice said, her voice trembling. I didn't know. The Potters were in hiding, and no one knew where they were. But they tortured us anyway. They broke our minds, Harry. They destroyed everything we were. Harry's heart ached for her. But you recovered? You got better? Alice shook her head. Not really. I can function, most of the time. But there are parts of me that will never heal. Parts of me that are still trapped in that room, screaming for them to stop. Harry reached out and took her hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For what happened to you. Alice squeezed his hand gently. You have nothing to be sorry for, Harry. You were just a baby. You didn't cause any of this. She paused, her eyes searching his face. But I need to tell you something important. What? Your mother knew something. Something about the war that no one else knew. She told me about it in confidence, right before you were born. She was afraid, Harry. She was terrified that someone was trying to use you, to control you, for their own purposes. Harry leaned forward. Do you know who? Not for sure. But she suspected someone high up in the ministry. Someone with a lot of power and influence. She tried to get proof, but she ran out of time. Alice's voice was shaking now. She asked me to protect you if anything happened to her. She asked me to make sure you knew the truth. Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for telling me this. Alice reached out and touched his face gently. You're so like her, she said. The same fire in your eyes. The same determination. She would have been so proud of you, Harry. So incredibly proud. Harry nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The weight of his mother's legacy was heavy, but it was also a comfort. She had loved him. She had planned for him. And now it was his turn to honor her memory. Alice, he said finally, I need your help. I'm going to get Sirius out of Azkaban. I'm going to prove his innocence and bring him home. Alice's eyes widened. That's impossible. No one has ever escaped. Then I'll be the first. Harry's voice was firm. I've already made my decision. I just need to know, will you help me? Alice stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Yes, she said. I'll help you. For Lily. For James. For all of us who were destroyed by the war. Harry felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. I won't forget this. The rest of the afternoon was spent planning. Alice told Harry everything she knew about Azkaban, its defenses, its location, the patterns of the Dementors that guarded it. She gave him information that no one else could have provided, including the location of a secret entrance that had been used centuries ago by smugglers and fugitives. How do you know about this? Harry asked. Because I was a member of the Order of the Phoenix, Alice said. We had access to information that the Ministry didn't want us to have. Some of us used it to fight. Others used it to survive. She paused. I used it to plan. I always knew that one day, I would need to get someone out of Azkaban. Harry studied her. You were going to rescue Frank, weren't you? Alice's face crumpled. Yes. But I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. The Dementors, they break you, Harry. They take everything you are and leave nothing behind. I couldn't face them. Harry reached out and took her hand. You don't have to. I'll do it. For both of us. Alice looked at him, her eyes full of tears. You're so brave, she whispered. So incredibly brave. Harry shook his head. I'm not brave. I'm just angry. And I'm tired of letting other people decide my life for me. Alice laughed, a broken, bitter laugh. That's exactly what your mother used to say. She was always angry. Always fighting. Always refusing to back down. Harry smiled. Sounds about right. They worked late into the night, mapping out Harry's journey to Azkaban, planning every detail. By the time Harry finally left Alice's house, the sun was rising over London, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. He walked back to the Leaky Cauldron with his heart full of purpose. The missing inheritance had been found, not just the wealth, but the truth. And now that Harry knew the truth, there was nothing stopping him from fighting for what was right. His parents' legacy was not just money and property. It was courage, love, and the willingness to stand up for justice. And Harry was going to carry that legacy forward, no matter what. It cost him. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. 10 Years of Hidden Truth. The rain came down in sheets over Diagon Alley, turning the cobblestones into rivers of gray that reflected the dim light of the enchanted lanterns. Harry stood at the window of his room at the Leaky Cauldron, watching the storm rage outside, and felt an echo of the turmoil inside his own heart. 3 weeks had passed since he'd discovered the truth about his inheritance. 3 weeks since he'd learned that Albus Dumbledore, the man he trusted, the man who had seemed so kind and wise, had been systematically draining the Potter fortune for his own purposes. 3 weeks since Harry had made the decision to fight back. And now, finally, the first pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. The investigation had been slow going at first. The goblins at Gringotts had been helpful, but they were limited in what they could do without official permission from the ministry. Harry had spent hours poring over documents, tracing the flow of money from the Potter accounts to various organizations and individuals. He'd discovered payments to St. Mungo's, to the Order of the Phoenix, to a dozen different charities and foundations that Dumbledore had apparently been supporting. But there were other payments too, payments that didn't make sense. Large sums of money that had been transferred to accounts that Harry couldn't trace. Transactions that had been flagged as confidential and classified by the ministry. Someone had been covering their tracks. Someone had been very careful to make sure that the truth about Harry's inheritance would never come to light. But they hadn't counted on Harry. And they hadn't counted on the goblins. There was a knock at the door. Harry turned to find Griphook standing in the doorway, his expression as unreadable as ever. "Mr. Potter," he said, "the High Council has finished their preliminary investigation. They have requested your presence." Harry's heart quickened. Now? Now. Griphook paused. "There are things you need to know. Things that will not be easy to hear." Harry nodded and followed the goblin through the winding corridors of the Leaky Cauldron, past the curious stares of the other patrons, and out into the rain. The streets of Diagon Alley were almost empty, the shops closed and shuttered against the storm. Harry pulled his cloak tighter around himself and hurried after Griphook, his mind racing with possibilities. The High Council chamber at Gringotts was unlike anything Harry had ever seen. It was vast and circular, its walls covered in ancient carvings that depicted battles between goblins and wizards, treaties and betrayals, alliances and wars. The ceiling was made of glass, showing a sky that was perpetually dark, lit only by the faint glow of distant stars. And at the center of the chamber, seated on a raised dais, were the 12 members of the High Council, the most powerful goblins in all of Britain. They watched Harry enter with expressions of cold calculation. Their eyes glittered in the dim light, and Harry felt a shiver run down his spine. These were not creatures to be trifled with. They had lived for centuries, had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, and had no patience for human weakness. "Harry James Potter," said the eldest goblin, his voice like gravel grinding against stone. "You stand before the High Council of Gringotts to receive the findings of our investigation into the theft of your parents' will and the mismanagement of your inheritance." Harry bowed his head. "Yes, sir. I'm grateful for your assistance." The goblin's eyes narrowed. "We do not do this for gratitude, Mr. Potter. We do this because the laws that were broken are older than your ministry, older than your magic, older than your entire civilization. Tampering with a family's last will is one of the gravest crimes under Goblin Treaty law. And those who committed this crime will be held accountable." Harry felt a surge of hope. "You know who did it. We have our suspicions." The goblin gestured to Griphook, who stepped forward with a stack of documents in his hands. "Over the past 3 weeks, we have examined every record, every transaction, every piece of magical evidence that could shed light on what happened to your parents' will. The trail has led us through a labyrinth of lies and cover-ups. But we have followed it to its end." Griphook handed the documents to Harry. "These are the findings of the investigation," he said. "They detailed the chain of events that led to the will being hidden, the individuals who were involved, and the reasons why they chose to act as they did." Harry's hands shook as he took the documents. Can I read them here?" "Read them in your own time," the eldest goblin said. "But we will give you a summary first. It will help you understand the scope of what has been done to you." Harry nodded, his heart pounding. The goblin began to speak, his voice flat and emotionless. "On the night of October 31st, 1981, your parents were killed. Their will, which had been stored in a secure vault at Gringotts, was supposed to be opened within 30 days of their deaths. However, records show that the will was removed from the vault on November 2, 1981, 2 days after your parents' deaths. Harry's blood ran cold. 2 days? But that means someone knew they were going to die, the goblin said. Someone was prepared for their deaths. The will was removed before it could be opened, and it was hidden in a secure location where it remained for the next 10 years. Harry's mind was reeling. Who removed it? The goblin's eyes glittered. The records show that the will was removed by a person with high-level clearance at Gringotts, someone who had the authority to access the most secure vaults. The signature on the order is that of... He paused, his voice dropping. Albus Dumbledore. Harry felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Dumbledore? He whispered. But why? Why would he do that? The goblin's expression was unreadable. That is the question, isn't it? Why would the most powerful wizard in Britain, the man who was supposed to be protecting you, steal your parents' will and hide it for 10 years? I don't understand. Harry's voice was shaking. He told me he wanted to protect me. He said the Dursleys were the only way to keep me safe. The Dursleys? The goblin's voice was flat. Yes. The investigation has uncovered some interesting details about your upbringing, Mr. Potter. Details that paint a very different picture than the one Dumbledore has presented. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What details? Griphook stepped forward, a scroll in his hands. We discovered a series of documents in the Ministry archives, records of your living conditions, school attendance, and medical care. They were all filed by Dumbledore's office. According to these records, you were living in a loving, stable home environment with relatives who cared deeply for you. Harry let out a bitter laugh. That's a lie. The Dursleys hated me. They locked me in a cupboard, starved me, beat me. I was a servant in their house, not a child. We know. Griphook's voice was grim. The goblins have ways of finding the truth, Mr. Potter. We interviewed your neighbors, your teachers, and several people who knew your aunt and uncle. The testimony we gathered paints a very different picture than the one Dumbledore submitted to the Ministry. Harry felt a surge of anger. Dumbledore knew. He knew I was being abused, and he did nothing. He did more than nothing. The eldest goblin's voice was cold. He actively covered it up. He filed false reports with the Ministry, claiming that you were being well cared for. He prevented anyone from investigating your situation. And when Amelia Bones tried to intervene, he used his influence to have her reassigned. Harry's hands were shaking. Why? Why? Would he do all of this? The goblin was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he spoke. We believe that Dumbledore's actions were motivated by a combination of factors. First, he genuinely believed that the blood protection provided by your aunt's home was the only thing standing between you and Lord Voldemort. He was willing to sacrifice your happiness, even your safety, to keep you alive. Harry felt sick. That's not protection. That's imprisonment. Second, the goblin continued, we believe that Dumbledore had ulterior motives. He wanted to control you, Mr. Potter. He wanted to shape you into the person he believed you needed to be, rather than letting you become who you were meant to become. Harry's eyes widened. Control me? Why? The goblin's expression was cold. Because you are powerful, Mr. Potter. Your parents were powerful, and their power was passed on to you. Dumbledore wanted to ensure that you used that power in a way that served his purposes. Harry shook his head. I don't understand. I'm just a kid. I don't have any power. You have more power than you know. The goblin leaned forward, his eyes glittering. The will contained more than just instructions for your guardianship. It contained ancient magic, magic that was meant to be unlocked when you came of age. Magic that would make you one of the most powerful wizards in Britain. Harry's heart was pounding. What kind of magic? The goblin was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached into his robes and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. This was found in your parents' vault, he said. It was sealed with a charm that only you can break. We believe it contains the answers you are looking for. Harry took the book, his hands trembling. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. The cover was blank, but when Harry opened it, the pages began to glow with a familiar golden light. "Read it," the goblin said. "When you are ready." Harry retreated to the private room at the Leaky Cauldron and sat in the armchair, the book open on his lap. The golden light was soft and warm, like sunlight filtering through leaves, and as Harry stared at the pages, words began to appear, written in his mother's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Harry," the first page read. "If you are reading this, then you have uncovered the truth about what happened to our Will. I know that this knowledge must be painful. I know that you must feel betrayed and angry and lost. But I am writing this to give you hope. To give you the tools you need to fight back. The will that your father and I created was not just a legal document. It was a magical contract, bound by ancient blood magic that cannot be broken or undone. It was designed to protect you, Harry, to ensure that you would always have the resources, the support, and the love you needed to grow into the person you were meant to be. But we knew that there were people who would try to interfere. People who would try to control you for their own purposes. And so we built protections into the will, protections that would only be activated if someone tried to tamper with it." Harry read on, his heart pounding. "First, we set up a series of magical triggers. If the will was opened by anyone other than you, it would automatically alert Gringotts and the Ministry. That didn't happen, which means that someone with very powerful magical abilities was able to bypass those protections. Second, we left a trail of evidence. We knew that if the will was hidden, someone would have to go to great lengths to cover their tracks. We documented everything, every transaction, every meeting, every conversation, in the hope that one day you would be able to follow our breadcrumbs to the truth. The final piece of the puzzle is the most important," the letter continued. "We created a magical artifact, a key of sorts, that would unlock the full truth about what happened to our will. This key is hidden in a place that only you can find. It is connected to your bloodline, your magic, and your heart. Find the key, Harry. Find it, and you will find the truth." Harry closed the book, his mind racing. A key? A magical key that would unlock the full truth about what had happened to his parents' will. But where was it? How was he supposed to find it? He thought back to his mother's words. It is connected to your bloodline, your magic, and your heart. What did that mean? Where could such a key be hidden? And then, suddenly, Harry knew. The key was in Godric's Hollow. The journey to Godric's Hollow was dangerous. Remus had warned him against it, arguing that it was too risky, too exposed. But Harry was determined. He needed to see the place where his parents had died. He needed to connect with them one more time before he could move forward. The village was small and quiet, nestled in the rolling hills of the West Country. Harry walked through the streets, his heart heavy with emotion. This was where his parents had lived. This was where they had raised him, loved him, died for him. He found the cottage easily, a small, stone building that had been left to decay, its windows shattered, its roof caved in. A sign had been placed in front of it, warning visitors to stay away. But Harry ignored the sign and walked up the overgrown path, his heart pounding. The cottage was smaller than he'd imagined. He could see the outlines of the rooms, the places where his parents had lived and loved and dreamed. He could almost feel their presence in the air, like ghosts of warmth and laughter. And then he saw it. There was a small, carved stone in the garden, a stone that had been hidden by the overgrown grass. Harry knelt down and brushed away the leaves, revealing the words that had been carved into its surface. "To my son, Harry, with all my love." Harry's breath caught. This was it. This was the key. He reached out and touched the stone, and a surge of magic flowed through him, the same warm, golden light he'd felt in his mother's journal. The stone began to glow, and then it cracked open, revealing a small, velvet pouch hidden inside. Harry opened the pouch and found a ring, a simple, silver ring with a green emerald at its center. The emerald pulsed with the same light as his mother's magic, and Harry knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the key his mother had spoken of. He slipped the ring onto his finger, and the world exploded with light. Harry was standing in the middle of a garden he recognized from his mother's memories. The fountain was there, and the flowers, and the sky that was impossibly blue. But this time, there was something different. This time, his mother was not alone. His father was there too. James Potter was standing beside Lily, his arm around her shoulders, his eyes shining with tears. He looked exactly like Harry had imagined him: messy hair, crooked glasses, a warm smile that made Harry's heart ache. "Harry," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "My boy. Look at you. You've grown so much." Harry couldn't speak. He was crying too hard, his chest heaving with sobs that he couldn't control. His parents were here, both of them, and they were looking at him with so much love that it hurt. "We've been waiting for you," Lily said, her voice soft and full of love. "We've been waiting for this moment for so long." Harry finally found his voice. "I miss you," he choked out. "I miss you so much." James stepped forward and pulled Harry into a tight embrace. Harry felt his father's arms around him, felt the warmth of his love, felt the strength that had protected him even in death. "We miss you too, son," James whispered. "Every single day." Lily joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and for a moment, Harry felt complete. Whole. Like everything was finally right in the world. But then the embrace ended, and his parents' expressions turned serious. "Harry," Lily said, "we don't have much time. The key you found, it will only work once. We've been saving this moment for 10 years, waiting for you to find it." Harry looked at her, his eyes still full of tears. "What do I need to know?" James spoke first. "The will was hidden by Dumbledore," he said. "But he wasn't working alone. There were others, people in the Ministry, people in the Wizengamot, people who wanted to control you for their own purposes." Lily nodded. "We believe that the conspiracy goes deeper than just Dumbledore. There are powerful forces at work in the wizarding world, Harry, forces that have been manipulating events for decades. And they saw you as a threat." Harry's jaw tightened. "Why?" "I was just a baby." "Because you were the child of James and Lily Potter," James said, his voice proud. "You were the heir to an ancient legacy of power and magic. And you were the only person who could defeat Lord Voldemort." "But I don't even know how to use magic," Harry protested. "I don't have any power." "Your power is inside you, Harry." Lily's voice was fierce. "It's been there since the day you were born. The key you found, the ring, it will unlock that power. But you have to be ready. You have to be willing to fight." Harry looked at the ring on his finger. It was warm against his skin, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that matched his heartbeat. "How do I use it?" Lily smiled. "It will show you in time. The ring is connected to your parents' magic. It will help you access the knowledge we left behind. But you must be patient, Harry. The truth will come to you when you are ready." James reached out and put his hand on Harry's shoulder. "Be careful, son. The people who hid our will are dangerous. They will stop at nothing to keep their secrets. Trust your instincts. Trust your friends. And never, ever give up." Harry nodded, his heart full of determination. "I won't. I promise." Lily stepped forward and kissed his forehead. "We love you, Harry. We have always loved you, and we will always love you. Remember that. Remember us." The garden began to fade, the colors growing dimmer, the sounds growing softer. Harry reached out, trying to hold on to his parents, but they were already dissolving into light. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you both so much." And then he was back in the garden at Godric's Hollow, kneeling on the ground, tears streaming down his face. The ring was warm on his finger, pulsing with a gentle light. Harry looked at it, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that everything was going to change. The journey back to London was a blur. Harry sat in the train compartment, staring at the ring on his finger, trying to process everything he'd learned. Dumbledore had hidden the will. He'd covered up Harry's abuse. He'd stolen Harry's inheritance. And he'd done it all in the name of protecting Harry, or so he claimed. But the ring had shown Harry more than just the truth. It had shown him that there were others involved, others who wanted to use Harry for their own purposes. And it had shown Harry that he had the power to fight back. The train pulled into King's Cross, and Harry stepped out onto the platform. The rain had stopped, and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds, casting long shadows across the station. Remus was waiting for him on the platform, his face lined with worry. "Harry, where have you been?" "I've been looking everywhere." Harry held up his hand, showing Remus the ring. "I found it," he said. "The key. It was hidden in Godric's Hollow." Remus's eyes widened. "The key? Your mother's key?" Harry nodded. "It showed me the truth, Remus. Dumbledore hid the will. He covered up my abuse. He stole my inheritance. And he wasn't working alone." Remus's face went pale. "Harry, are you sure?" "I'm sure." Harry's voice was cold. "I know the truth now. And I know what I have to do." Remus looked at him, his eyes full of concern. "What are you going to do?" Harry took a deep breath. "I'm going to find out who else was involved. I'm going to expose them all. And I'm going to make them pay for what they did to my family." Remus was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll help you," he said. "Whatever it takes." Harry smiled, a grim, determined smile. "Thank you, Remus. I knew I could count on you." They walked out of the station together, into the grey London afternoon. Harry's hand was still warm from the ring, pulsing with his mother's magic, and his heart was full of purpose. The truth was finally coming to light. And nothing, not Dumbledore, not the Ministry, not the entire wizarding world, was going to stop Harry from uncovering it all. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Goblins begin their investigation. The High Council chamber was colder than Harry remembered. Perhaps it was the weight of what was about to happen. Perhaps it was the presence of so many powerful goblins, their eyes glittering with ancient knowledge and barely concealed fury. Or perhaps it was simply the knowledge that today, everything would change. Harry sat in the center of the chamber, the ring still warm on his finger, his parents' journal clutched in his hands. Beside him stood Remus, his face pale but determined, and Grip Hook, whose expression was as unreadable as ever. They had been waiting for nearly an hour, and Harry's nerves were stretched thin. "The High Council will now convene," the eldest goblin announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "This is an official inquiry into the theft and concealment of the last will and testament of James and Lily Potter, as well as the systematic mismanagement of the Potter family inheritance." The 12 goblins on the dais leaned forward, their eyes fixed on Harry. The weight of their attention was almost physical, pressing down on him like a physical force. "Harry James Potter," the eldest goblin continued, "you have brought before this council evidence of crimes that violate the oldest laws of our people. You have asked us to investigate, to uncover the truth, and to hold those responsible accountable. We have agreed to do so." Harry nodded, his throat tight. "Thank you. I know this is. We do not require your gratitude." The goblin's voice was sharp. "We require the truth. And we require your cooperation." Harry swallowed hard. "You have it. Whatever you need." The goblin nodded and gestured to Grip Hook, who stepped forward with a thick stack of documents. "These are the preliminary findings of our investigation," Grip Hook said. They detailed the chain of events that led to the will being hidden, the individuals who were involved, and the magical signatures that were left behind. The eldest goblin took the documents and began to read aloud, his voice flat and emotionless. The will was removed from Gringotts on November 2, 1981, by a person with high-level clearance. The magical signature on the removal order matches that of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. However, our investigation has revealed that Dumbledore was not acting alone. He was assisted by at least 3 other individuals, all of whom held positions of power within the Ministry of Magic. Harry's heart was pounding. Who? Who helped him? The goblin's eyes glittered. The names will be revealed in time, Mr. Potter. But first, we must establish the full scope of the conspiracy. We must understand why the will was hidden, and what the conspirators hoped to gain. Remus spoke up, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. The will contained instructions for Harry's guardianship. It named Sirius Black as the first choice, followed by myself and Amelia Bones. If the will had been followed, Harry would have been raised by people who loved him and who were prepared to protect him. Instead, the goblin continued, the will was hidden, and Harry Potter was placed with the Dursleys, people who had no legal right to custody and who, as our investigation has revealed, subjected him to years of abuse and neglect. The room was silent. Harry could feel the eyes of the goblins on him, could feel their judgment and their anger. But there was something else too, something that felt almost like sympathy. Mr. Potter, the eldest goblin said, I must ask you a difficult question. Are you prepared to testify before this council about the conditions of your upbringing? Harry's throat tightened. He'd known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, he felt exposed. Vulnerable. He would have to tell these strangers about the cupboard under the stairs, about Vernon's fists and Petunia's cold silences, about the years of loneliness and fear. But he would do it. For his parents. For the truth. Yes, he said, his voice steady. I'm prepared. The goblin nodded, and Harry began to speak. He told them everything, the cupboard, the beatings, the starvation, the constant stream of cruelty that had been his daily life for 10 years. He told them about the school where he'd been bullied and ignored, about the neighbors who'd looked the other way, about the system that had failed him completely. And when he finished, there was not a single goblin in the room who wasn't visibly affected. Their faces were grim, their eyes hard, their hands clenched into fists. This is an outrage. One of the goblins spat. This is a violation of everything we stand for. Indeed. The eldest goblin agreed. And it will not go unpunished. The rest of the inquiry was dedicated to establishing the legal framework of the investigation. The goblins cited ancient treaties, referenced magical contracts, and called upon witnesses who had been part of the events of 1981. One of the most important witnesses was Amelia Bones. She arrived in the chamber looking tired and drawn, her eyes shadowed with worry. But there was a fierce determination in her bearing that reminded Harry of his mother, the same fire, the same refusal to back down. Madam Bones, the eldest goblin said, thank you for agreeing to testify. Amelia nodded. I've been waiting for this moment for 10 years, she said. I knew something was wrong with Harry's situation, but I couldn't prove it. Every time I tried to investigate, I was blocked. Blocked by whom? Amelia's eyes narrowed. By Albus Dumbledore. By the minister himself. By an entire network of people who seemed determined to keep Harry in the dark. She paused. I filed reports. I requested hearings. But every single time, I was told that the matter was under control and that I should trust Dumbledore's judgment. Harry's blood boiled. They knew. They all knew, and they did nothing. Amelia turned to him, her expression softening. Yes, Harry. They knew. And I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have pushed back. It's not your fault, Harry said. You did what you could. Amelia shook her head. It wasn't enough. But I promise you, Harry, I will make it right. I will do everything in my power to expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. The goblins nodded their approval. Madam Bones, we will require your full cooperation in this investigation. We will need access to your files, your notes, and your testimony. You have it, Amelia said. Whatever you need. The next phase of the inquiry focused on the magical evidence. Griphook produced the original will, the one that had been hidden for 10 years, and placed it on a pedestal in the center of the room. The parchment glowed faintly, its magical protections still intact. This document was sealed with the blood of James and Lily Potter, Griphook said. It is keyed to Harry's magical signature. Any attempt to tamper with it would have triggered a series of alerts. And yet, The eldest goblin observed. The will was removed from Gringotts and hidden for a decade. How is that possible? Griphook's expression was grim. Whoever removed the will used a very powerful spell, one that we have only seen a handful of times in our history. It is a spell that allows the caster to bypass blood wards and magical locks, but it leaves a unique magical signature. Can you trace that signature? Yes. Griphook's eyes glittered. The signature matches the magical residue found in the Potter Vault, as well as in several other locations associated with Albus Dumbledore. The room erupted into whispers. Harry could feel the tension building, the weight of the accusation settling over the council like a dark cloud. Albus Dumbledore, the eldest goblin repeated. The chief warlock of the Wizengamot. The headmaster of Hogwarts. The man who was supposed to be Harry Potter's protector. Harry's voice cut through the noise. He wasn't my protector. He was my jailer. The room fell silent. He took everything from me. Harry continued, his voice shaking with emotion. He took my parents' legacy. He took my childhood. He took the love that should have been mine. And he did it all while pretending to be kind. The eldest goblin studied Harry for a long moment. And what would you have us do, Mr. Potter? Harry met his gaze. I want the truth. I want everyone to know what he did. I want him to answer for his crimes. The goblin nodded slowly. Then we will give you the truth. And we will ensure that justice is served. The inquiry continued for hours, days, weeks. Harry attended every session, his eyes fixed on the proceedings, his heart full of a cold, burning determination. He learned that Dumbledore had not acted alone. He had been assisted by several ministry officials, including Cornelius Fudge, who had signed off on the false reports about Harry's living conditions. He had been aided by Dolores Umbridge, who had helped cover up the evidence of Harry's abuse. He had been supported by a network of people who had benefited from the Potter fortune, people who had grown rich and powerful on the back of Harry's suffering. But the most shocking revelation came near the end of the inquiry. There is something else, Griphook said, his voice grave. Something that we discovered only recently. It appears that Dumbledore used some of the Potter fortune to fund a secret research project, a project that was designed to create a weapon that could be used against Lord Voldemort. Harry's eyes widened. A weapon? We don't know the details, Griphook admitted. But the records show that significant sums of money were transferred to a research facility in Scotland. The project was classified, even by ministry standards. Harry's mind was racing. Dumbledore had been working on a weapon? A weapon that he'd funded with Harry's inheritance? And he'd hidden the will and stolen Harry's childhood to do it? What kind of weapon? Harry asked. What was he trying to create? We don't know, the eldest goblin said. But we will find out. This investigation will not stop until every truth has been uncovered. Harry nodded, his determination hardening. He would see this through to the end. He would uncover every secret, expose every lie, and hold everyone accountable. The final day of the inquiry was the most emotional. The council called a series of witnesses who had known Harry's parents, friends, allies, people who had fought alongside them during the war. They testified about James's bravery and Lily's brilliance, about the love they had for their son, about the dreams they had for his future. And then, at the very end, they called a witness that Harry hadn't expected. Sirius Black. Sirius was still in Azkaban, but the goblins had arranged for a magical projection, a ghostly image of his face, gaunt and hollow, but still recognizable. His eyes, when they met Harry's, were filled with a desperate hope. Harry, Sirius said, his voice barely a whisper. Harry, is it really you? Harry's heart ached at the sight of him. It's me, Sirius. I'm here. I'm going to get you out. Sirius shook his head. No, Harry. You can't. Azkaban is too dangerous. The Dementors. I don't care. Harry's voice was fierce. You're my godfather. You were supposed to raise me. And I'm not going to leave you in that place. Sirius's eyes filled with tears. You look so like James. he said. So like him. He would have been so proud of you. Harry felt tears pricking at his eyes. I'm going to make him proud, he promised. I'm going to make both of them proud. Sirius nodded, unable to speak. The council continued their questioning, but Harry barely heard them. He was too focused on Sirius, on the hope that was finally beginning to bloom in his heart. His godfather was still alive, still fighting, and Harry was going to save him. The inquiry concluded with a formal statement from the High Council. We have found sufficient evidence to support Harry Potter's claims, the eldest goblin announced. The will of James and Lily Potter was illegally removed from Gringotts, hidden for 10 years, and prevented from being carried out. The guardianship plans were ignored, and Harry Potter was placed in an abusive household against his parents' explicit wishes. We have also found sufficient evidence to suggest that Albus Dumbledore, Cornelius Fudge, Dolores Umbridge, and others were involved in this conspiracy. We will be submitting our findings to the Wizengamot and demanding a full investigation. Harry felt a surge of relief. It was finally happening. The truth was finally coming to light. But the goblin wasn't finished. Furthermore, he continued, we have discovered evidence that Dumbledore used the Potter fortune to fund a secret project. A project that may have serious implications for the safety and security of the wizarding world. We will be pursuing this line of inquiry as well. Harry's heart was pounding. What kind of implications? The goblin's eyes glittered. We don't know yet. But we will find out. And when we do, we will hold everyone responsible accountable. Harry nodded, his determination unwavering. He would see this through to the end. He would uncover every secret, expose every lie, and make sure that justice was served. His parents had trusted him. His parents had believed in him. And now, finally, he had the chance to honor their legacy. After the inquiry, Harry walked through the streets of Diagon Alley with Remus at his side. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the streets were quiet. It's really happening, Harry said. They're finally going to investigate. They're finally going to hold people accountable. Remus nodded, his expression grave. Yes. But this is just the beginning, Harry. There will be pushback. People will try to discredit you, to silence you. You have to be ready. I'm ready. Harry's voice was hard. I've been ready my whole life. Remus placed a hand on his shoulder. Your parents would be so proud of you. You know that, right? Harry nodded, his throat tight. I know. And I'm going to keep fighting. For them. For Sirius. For everyone who was hurt by this conspiracy. They walked in silence for a while, the weight of the day's events settling over them like a shroud. Finally, Harry spoke. What happens now? Remus was quiet for a long moment. Now we wait, he said. The goblins will submit their findings to the Wizengamot, and the Ministry will be forced to act. But it will take time. And in the meantime, we have to be careful. Harry nodded. I understand. Remus squeezed his shoulder. And Harry, whatever happens, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud to have known you, proud to be part of your life. Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. Thank you, Remus. That means more than you know. They continued walking, the sun setting behind them, the future uncertain but filled with hope. Harry's fight was just beginning. But for the first time in his life, he was no longer fighting alone. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7, Sirius learns the truth. The cell was cold. It was always cold in Azkaban, a bone-deep chill that seeped into the soul and never let go. Sirius Black had been living with that cold for 10 years, had grown so accustomed to it that he sometimes forgot what warmth felt like. But today, the cold was different. Today, it was accompanied by something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. It had started with the whispers. The Dementors were everywhere, their presence a constant pressure on his mind, but they couldn't stop the whispers that occasionally filtered through the walls. The prisoners talked, even when they knew they shouldn't. They talked about the boy who lived, about the goblin's investigation, about the will that had finally been found. Sirius had thought he was hallucinating at first. The Dementors played tricks on the mind, made you see things that weren't there, made you believe in impossibilities. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more detailed. And then, one day, a guard had come to his cell, a real guard, not a Dementor, and told him that he was being summoned. Summoned. After 10 years of silence, 10 years of rotting in this hellhole, someone was finally paying attention to him. Sirius had been led through the corridors of Azkaban, his chains clanking with every step. The Dementors had watched him pass, their hooded faces turning toward him like predators sensing weakness. But Sirius had held his head high. For the first time in a decade, he had something to hold on to. The room they'd brought him to was small and bare, with a single chair and a table. A goblin sat behind the table, his face unreadable, and beside him stood a woman that Sirius recognized. Amelia Bones. She looked older than he remembered, her hair streaked with silver, her face lined with worry. But her eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent, utterly unyielding. "Sirius," she said, her voice gentle. "I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry for everything." Sirius shook his head, too overwhelmed to speak. He dreamed of this moment for so long, imagined it in 1,000 different ways. But now that it was here, he didn't know what to say. Amelia gestured for him to sit, and he lowered himself into the chair, his chains rattling. "We've found the will," she said. "James and Lily's will. It was hidden for 10 years, but Harry found it." Sirius's heart stopped. "Harry? Harry found it?" "Yes." Amelia's voice was thick with emotion. "He's been fighting for the truth. He's been fighting for you." Sirius felt tears prick at his eyes. He hadn't cried since the night James and Lily died, hadn't allowed himself to feel anything except the cold, numbing despair that the Dementors fed on. But now, the tears came freely. "He's alive," Sirius whispered. "He's alive, and he found the will. He's more than alive, Sirius." Amelia leaned forward, her eyes bright with purpose. "He's determined. He's been working with the goblins, building a case against the people who hid the will. And he's going to get you out of here." Sirius shook his head. "That's impossible. No one escapes from Azkaban. No one has ever tried like this before." Amelia's voice was fierce. "The goblins have taken up his cause. They're investigating the theft of the will, and they found evidence that you were framed. You're going to have a trial, Sirius. A real trial." Sirius stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. A trial. After 10 years of silence, 10 years of rotting in this place, he was going to get a trial. "Who?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Who did this? Who framed me?" Amelia's expression darkened. "We don't know all the details yet. But the evidence points to a conspiracy involving several powerful people, including Albus Dumbledore." Sirius's eyes widened. "Dumbledore? But he was our leader. He was supposed to protect us. He was supposed to protect Harry too," Amelia said bitterly. "And instead, he left him with the Dursleys, people who abused him for 10 years. Sirius felt a surge of rage. "The Dursleys? Petunia? He left Harry with Petunia?" "I know." Amelia's voice softened. "But Harry survived. He's strong, Sirius. Stronger than anyone expected. And he's determined to make things right." Sirius was silent for a long moment, processing everything he just heard. His godson had been abused. His best friend's son had been left to suffer while Sirius rotted in this hellhole. And Dumbledore, the man they'd all trusted, had been responsible. "I need to see him," Sirius said finally. "I need to see Harry." Amelia nodded. "He wants to see you too. But we have to be careful. There are people who don't want this investigation to succeed. They'll try to stop us." "I don't care." Sirius's voice was hard. "I've waited 10 years for this. I'm not going to let anyone stop me now." Amelia studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "All right. We'll arrange it. But you have to be patient, Sirius. These things take time. Sirius clenched his fists. I've been patient for 10 years. I can wait a little longer. The weeks that followed were the longest of Sirius's life. The goblins worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, building the case that would finally prove his innocence. Amelia visited him regularly, bringing updates and news from the outside world. She told him about Harry's determination, his courage, his refusal to back down. And slowly Sirius began to hope again. He thought about James and Lily, about the laughter they'd shared, the dreams they'd built together. He thought about the night Harry was born, when James had placed the baby in Sirius's arms and said, "You're his godfather. Your family." He thought about the promise he'd made to protect Harry, a promise he'd been unable to keep. But now, he had a second chance. Now, he could finally make things right. The day of his transfer arrived without warning. Guards came to his cell, their faces grim, and let him out of Azkaban for the first time in 10 years. The sun was blinding, the air so fresh it made his lungs ache. Sirius stumbled as he walked, his legs weak from years of disuse, but he refused to fall. They brought him to a small building on the outskirts of London, a safe house that the goblins had arranged. Inside, the rooms were warm and bright, and the food was plentiful. Sirius ate like he hadn't eaten in years, stuffing himself until his stomach ached. And then, finally, the door opened, and Harry walked in. Sirius's heart stopped. He was so small, smaller than Sirius had imagined, smaller than he should have been at 11 years old. His clothes were too big, hanging off his thin frame like a sack. His glasses were held together with tape, and there was a weariness in his eyes that made Sirius want to weep. But there was something else in those eyes too. Something fierce. Something determined. "Sirius?" Harry's voice was hesitant, uncertain. "Sirius, is it really you?" Sirius couldn't speak. He crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled Harry into his arms, holding him like he would never let go. Harry was stiff at first, awkward, but then he relaxed, his small body shaking with sobs. "I've got you," Sirius whispered. "I've got you, Harry. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, crying together. When they finally pulled apart, Sirius cupped Harry's face in his hands and looked at him, really looked at him. "You look just like James," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The same eyes. The same hair. The same stubbornness." Harry laughed, a watery, broken laugh. "That's what everyone says." "Well, they're right." Sirius smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd worn in 10 years. "Your father was my best friend, Harry. He was the brother I never had. And I loved him more than I've ever loved anyone." Harry nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know. My mother told me. In her journal. Lily." Sirius's voice caught. She was the best of us. The brightest, the kindest. I miss her every day." "I miss them too," Harry said. "Even though I never really knew them. I miss what could have been." Sirius pulled him into another embrace. "I know, Harry. I know. But we're going to make it right. We're going to build something new, something worthy of their memory." Harry nodded against his chest. "I want that. I want that more than anything." The hours that followed were filled with conversation. Sirius told Harry about James and Lily, about their time at Hogwarts, their friendship with the Marauders, their love for each other and for their son. He told Harry about the war, about the terror of living under Voldemort's shadow, about the sacrifices that so many people had made. And Harry told Sirius about his life, the Dursleys, the cupboard, the years of abuse and neglect. He told him about discovering the wizarding world, about the will, about the goblins' investigation. He told him about his determination to make things right, to honor his parents' legacy, to bring justice to everyone who had been wronged. "You're so brave," Sirius said, his voice filled with pride. "So incredibly brave. Your parents would be so proud of you." Harry shook his head. "I'm not brave. I'm just angry. That's what courage is, Harry. Sirius's voice was soft. Being angry enough to fight for what's right, even when you're scared. Being determined enough to keep going, even when everything seems hopeless. Harry looked at him, his eyes bright. You're not giving up either. You survived Azkaban. You survived 10 years of Dementors. Sirius's expression darkened. I survived because I had something to hold on to. I knew I was innocent. I knew I had to get out, to find you, to protect you. That kept me going, even when everything else was gone. Harry reached out and took his hand. You don't have to protect me alone anymore. I have friends now. Remus. Amelia. The goblins. We're all in this together. Sirius squeezed his hand. I know. And I'm grateful. More grateful than I can ever say. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Sirius was officially released from Azkaban, pending trial. The goblins had provided enough evidence of his innocence to secure his freedom, and the Ministry was forced to comply. Sirius spent his days with Harry, getting to know his godson, making up for lost time. They visited Godric's Hollow together, walking through the ruins of the cottage where James and Lily had died. Sirius stood in the garden, his hand on the stone that Harry had found, and wept. I should have been there, he said. I should have protected them. Don't. Harry's voice was firm. Don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault. The people who did this, the people who hid the will and framed you, they're the ones to blame. Sirius looked at him, his eyes red. You're so like your mother, he said. She always knew exactly what to say. Harry smiled. That's what everyone says too. They returned to London, and the investigation continued. The goblins had uncovered even more evidence, digging deeper into the conspiracy that had destroyed Harry's childhood. They'd found records, transactions, and magical signatures that pointed to a web of deception stretching to the highest levels of the Ministry. But the most shocking revelation came when they discovered the truth about Sirius's imprisonment. It wasn't just Dumbledore, Griphook said, his voice grim. There were others, Ministry officials who knew Sirius was innocent, who had evidence that could have exonerated him. But they chose to ignore it. Sirius's face was pale. Why? Why would they do that? Because they were afraid. Amelia's voice was cold. They were afraid of what would happen if the truth came out. They were afraid of losing power, losing control. So they sacrificed an innocent man to protect their own interests. Harry's hands clenched into fists. That's not justice. That's not even justice. No, Amelia agreed. It's not. But we're going to change that. We're going to make sure that no one else suffers the way you did, Sirius. We're going to expose the truth and hold everyone accountable. Sirius nodded, his expression hardening. I'll help. Whatever it takes. The trial was set for the end of the summer. Sirius was nervous, though he tried not to show it. He'd been waiting for this moment for 10 years, dreaming of the chance to clear his name. But now that it was here, he was terrified. What if the evidence wasn't enough? What if the Ministry found a way to silence him again? But Harry was there, standing beside him, his presence a constant source of strength. We're going to win, Harry said. I know we are. Sirius smiled, his heart full of love for this brave, determined boy. You're right, Harry. We are. The day of the trial, the Wizengamot chamber was packed. Every seat was filled, and more people stood along the walls, straining to see what would happen. Sirius walked in with his head held high, Harry at his side, Remus and Amelia close behind. The chief warlock called the court to order, and the proceedings began. The goblins presented their evidence, the will, the financial records, the magical signatures. They called witnesses who testified to Sirius's character, his loyalty, his innocence. They presented proof that he had been framed, that the evidence against him had been fabricated. And then, at the end, the court delivered its verdict. Sirius Black, we find you not guilty of all charges. You are hereby exonerated and released. Sirius felt the weight lift from his shoulders. The tears came freely, and he didn't try to stop them. Harry was hugging him, and Remus was there too, and Amelia was smiling through her own tears. "You're free," Harry whispered. "You're finally free." Sirius held him tight. "I'm free, Harry. And it's all because of you." The celebration that night was quiet but joyful. They gathered at the Leaky Cauldron, Sirius, Harry, Remus, and Amelia. Tom brought out his best bottles of butterbeer, and they toasted to the future, to Sirius's freedom, to Harry's bravery, to the truth that had finally come to light. "To James and Lily," Sirius said, raising his glass. "To the best friends anyone could ever have." "To James and Lily," the others echoed. Harry looked around the table at the people who had become his family: Sirius, Remus, Amelia. They had been brought together by tragedy, by loss, by a conspiracy that had tried to destroy them. But they had survived. They had fought back. And they had won. "We still have work to do," Harry said. "The people who did this, they're still out there. Dumbledore, Fudge, everyone else who was involved. We have to hold them accountable." Sirius nodded. "And we will. But tonight we celebrate." Harry smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "You're right. Tonight we celebrate." They drank and laughed and talked into the night, sharing stories and dreams and hopes for the future. And when the celebration finally ended, Sirius pulled Harry aside. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Harry looked up at him, his green eyes bright. "You're my family, Sirius. I'll never give up on you." Sirius pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. "I love you, Harry. I love you like you were my own son." "I love you too," Harry whispered. "I love you too." They stood there in the quiet of the night, holding each other, knowing that everything had finally changed. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. Harry claims Potter Manor. The morning of Harry's first visit to Potter Manor dawned grey and misty, the kind of English morning that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something extraordinary to happen. Harry stood at the window of the Leaky Cauldron, his reflection ghostly in the glass, and felt the ring on his finger pulse with a warmth that had become familiar over the past weeks. Sirius was behind him, pacing restlessly. "Are you ready for this?" Harry turned, a small smile playing at his lips. "I've been ready my whole life." Sirius stopped pacing and looked at him, his gray eyes soft with emotion. "Your father used to say that about everything. Ready my whole life. He never hesitated, never doubted himself." He paused. "It got him into trouble sometimes, but it also made him extraordinary." Harry felt a surge of warmth at the comparison. "He sounds like he was an amazing person." "He was." Sirius's voice was thick. "And so are you." Remus appeared in the doorway, his expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "The goblins have confirmed that the wards on the manor have been reset. They're keyed to your blood now, Harry. No one can enter without your permission." Harry nodded, his heart pounding. Potter Manor. His parents' home. The place where he was supposed to have grown up, where he was supposed to have been loved and cherished, and raised in the warmth of his family. It had been sealed for 10 years, waiting for him. "Let's go," he said. The journey to Potter Manor took them through the heart of the English countryside, past rolling hills and ancient forests, until they reached a small village that Harry didn't recognize. Sirius led them down a winding lane, past cottages with thatched roofs, until they came to a gate that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was wrought iron, black and intricate, covered in ivy that had grown wild over the decades. At its center was a crest, a stag and a doe, their antlers and horns intertwined, with the words, "Protect and Serve," written beneath them in elegant script. "Your family's crest," Sirius said, his voice reverent. "James designed it himself. He said it represented everything he wanted for his family: strength, loyalty, love." Harry reached out and touched the crest. The iron was warm beneath his fingers, and the ring on his hand pulsed with a golden light. The gate swung open, creaking on ancient hinges, and Harry stepped through. The manor rose before him like something out of a dream. It was old, impossibly old, its stone walls covered in ivy and climbing roses. The windows were tall and arched, sparkling in the morning light, and the roof was a patchwork of gray slate and green moss. It wasn't as grand as Hogwarts, but it was beautiful, warm and welcoming, like an embrace from the past. "This is where I was supposed to grow up," Harry whispered. Sirius placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is where you will grow up. From now on, this is your home." Harry walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the gravel path. The front door was massive, made of oak and reinforced with iron bands. As Harry approached, the door swung open on its own, revealing a hallway that was bathed in golden light. The inside of Potter Manor was even more beautiful than the outside. The hallway was lined with portraits, Potters from centuries past, their painted eyes watching Harry with curiosity and warmth. The floors were polished wood, covered in rugs that seemed to move and shift on their own. And the air was filled with the scent of old books and wood smoke, and something that smelled like wildflowers. "Welcome home, Master Harry," a voice said. Harry spun around. A house elf was standing in the hallway, his ears drooping, his eyes filled with tears. He was old, his skin wrinkled and gray, but there was a dignity in his bearing that made Harry's heart ache. "Who are you?" Harry asked gently. "I is Topsy, Master Harry." The house elf bowed low. "I is the head of the Potter house elves. I has been waiting for you for 10 long years." Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. "You've been here all this time? Waiting for me?" "Of course, Master Harry." Topsy's voice was filled with emotion. "The Potter family is our family. We vowed to protect this house until its true heir returned. And now you is here." Harry knelt down so he was level with Topsy. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for keeping my family's home safe." Topsy's eyes widened. "Master Harry is thanking us?" He looked at the other house elves who had appeared in the hallway, their eyes equally wide. "No one has ever thanked us before." Harry smiled. "Well, I'm thanking you now. You've been loyal to my family, and I won't forget that." Topsy burst into tears. "Master Harry is too kind. Too kind. We will serve you faithfully for the rest of our days." Harry stood up, his heart full. He was home. He was finally, truly home. The tour of Potter Manor took hours. Harry walked through room after room, each one more beautiful and magical than the last. The library was enormous, filled with books that stretched from floor to ceiling, some of them so old that their spines had crumbled to dust. The kitchen was warm and welcoming, with pots that stirred themselves and ovens that glowed with their own inner light. The garden was a riot of colors, filled with flowers that Harry had never seen before, their petals glowing with soft, magical luminescence. But it was the third floor that took Harry's breath away. The hallway was lined with portraits, not of distant ancestors, but of his parents. James and Lily, captured in magical paintings that seemed to move and breathe. In one, they were laughing together, their arms wrapped around each other. In another, they were holding a baby, Harry himself, their faces filled with wonder and love. Harry stopped in front of the largest portrait. It showed his parents seated in the manor's garden, surrounded by flowers, their hands intertwined. James was looking at Lily with an expression of pure adoration, and Lily was smiling at him, her green eyes bright with joy. "I miss them so much," Harry whispered. Sirius appeared beside him. "I miss them too. Every single day." Harry turned to him. "Tell me about them. Tell me about their life here." Sirius smiled, a sad, wistful smile. "They were so happy here, Harry. This was their sanctuary, their home. They spent hours in the garden, or in the library, or just sitting in the drawing room, talking about the future. They talked about you all the time, about the person you would become, the things you would achieve." Harry's throat was tight. "They had so many dreams for me." "They did. And now you have the chance to make those dreams come true." Sirius placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is your inheritance, Harry. Not just the money or the property, but the legacy. The family. The love that built all of this. Harry nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the tour took them through the manor's hidden spaces. The underground vaults where the family's treasures were stored, the observatory on the roof, the training rooms that had been used by generations of potters to hone their magical skills. But the most remarkable discovery came when they reached the very top of the manor, a tower room that had been sealed for centuries. The ancestral chamber, Sirius said, his voice hushed. It's only open for the rightful heir. Harry approached the door. It was made of stone, covered in runes that pulsed with a soft, golden light. He pressed his hand to the surface, and the runes flared, illuminating the entire room. The chamber was circular, its walls covered in tapestries that depicted the history of House Potter. There were scenes of battle, of healing, of discovery and innovation. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a book, ancient, bound in leather that seemed to shimmer with its own light. The Book of the House, Sirius said. It's been passed down through generations. It contains the knowledge and wisdom of every Potter who ever lived. Harry walked forward and opened the book. The pages were blank at first, but as Harry's fingers touched them, words began to appear, written in his mother's handwriting. To our son, Harry, who will one day claim this legacy, we have filled these pages with everything we know, everything we have learned, everything we believe to be true. May you find wisdom here. May you find strength. And may you always remember that you are loved, beyond measure, beyond death, beyond everything. Harry closed the book and pressed it to his chest, tears streaming down his face. He felt his parents' presence all around him, felt their love wrapping around him like a warm blanket. I won't let you down, he whispered. I promise. The following weeks were spent exploring the manor and uncovering its secrets. Harry discovered hidden rooms, secret passages, and treasures that had been lost for centuries. He found his mother's potion laboratory, still filled with ingredients and notes. He found his father's dueling chamber, with training dummies that still moved and defended themselves. He found the family archives, packed with letters, journals, and documents that told the story of his ancestors. And then, one day, he discovered something that made his heart stop. In the basement, hidden behind a false wall, he found a room that was unlike anything else in the manor. It was small and cozy, with a fireplace and a comfortable armchair. The walls were covered in photographs, moving photographs of his parents, his grandparents, his entire family. There were pictures of Sirius, of Remus, of people Harry had never met but who clearly meant the world to his parents. And on the mantelpiece, there was a single letter, addressed to him. Harry picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. My dearest Harry, the letter began. If you are reading this, then you have found the one room in the manor that your father and I kept secret from everyone. This was our sanctuary, our escape from the pressures of the war. It is also where we kept our most precious possession, our love for you. There are so many things we want to tell you, Harry. So many things we want to share. But we will have to leave that to the memories and the journals we have left behind. What we want to tell you now, in this letter, is simply this: you are our greatest gift. You are the best thing we ever did. And no matter what happens, no matter how hard the world may be, we will always be proud of you. We have left you the manor, and all the treasures it contains. But more importantly, we have left you our love. It is your birthright, Harry. It is yours forever. Harry read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. He clutched it to his chest, feeling his parents' love radiating from the words. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for everything. The first night in Potter Manor was the most peaceful Harry had ever experienced. He slept in his parents' bed, surrounded by their scent and their warmth, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly safe. The nightmares that had haunted him for as long as he could remember were gone, replaced by dreams of gardens and laughter, and the sound of his mother's voice singing lullabies. In the morning, he woke to the sound of birds singing outside his window. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden patterns on the floor. Harry lay in bed for a long moment, simply enjoying the feeling of being home. Then he got up, dressed in clothes that had been left for him by the house elves, and went downstairs to explore. The manor was full of life now. Sirius was in the library, reading through old books. Remus was in the garden, tending to the flowers. The house elves were bustling about, preparing breakfast and cleaning rooms that had been abandoned for a decade. Harry walked through the halls, greeting the portraits as he passed. They called out to him, sharing stories and advice, welcoming him into the family. He felt like he was surrounded by love, by warmth, by a sense of belonging that he'd never known. "Harry!" Sirius called from the library. "You need to see this." Harry hurried to the library, where Sirius was standing in front of a large map that Harry hadn't noticed before. It showed the entire manor and its grounds, including several hidden features that Harry hadn't known existed. "There's a training ground," Sirius said, pointing to a section of the map. "And a magical greenhouse. And look!" He pointed to a spot near the edge of the property. "There's a hidden passage that leads to the village. Your parents used it to escape during the war." Harry studied the map, his heart racing. There was so much to discover, so much to learn. Potter Manor was more than just a house. It was a legacy, a connection to his family's past, a foundation for his future. "We should explore the training ground," Harry said. "I need to start learning how to protect myself." Sirius nodded. "I'll teach you. Your father taught me, and I'll teach you. It's a family tradition." Harry smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "I'd like that." They spent the rest of the morning exploring the training ground, which was hidden in the woods behind the manor. It was a large clearing, surrounded by trees, with dummies and targets and obstacles that had been enchanted to move and challenge the user. Sirius began teaching Harry the basics of defensive magic, spells that would protect him from harm, spells that would disarm an opponent, spells that would help him escape from danger. Harry was a quick learner, his natural talent for magic shining through. "You're going to be great," Sirius said, watching Harry cast a perfect shield charm. "Even better than your father." Harry grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." The weeks passed in a blur of discovery and training. Harry explored every corner of the manor, uncovering secrets and treasures that had been hidden for generations. He found his mother's journals, which contained detailed notes on ancient protective magic, potion research, and hidden family knowledge that she had intended to teach him herself one day. He found his father's personal vault, which contained enchanted dueling lessons, memories of the Marauders, rare magical artifacts, and a letter encouraging Harry to always think for himself instead of blindly following authority. The more Harry learned about his parents, the more he felt connected to them. They had been extraordinary people, brave, clever, and fiercely loving. And they had left behind a legacy that Harry was determined to honor. One evening, after a long day of training, Harry sat in the garden with Sirius and Remus. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the air was filled with the scent of flowers. "I never thought I would have this," Harry said quietly. "A home. A family. A future." Sirius reached over and squeezed his hand. "You deserve it, Harry. You deserve all of it." Remus nodded. "Your parents would be so proud of you. Not just for what you've achieved, but for the person you've become." Harry smiled, his heart full. "I'm going to make them proud. I'm going to honor their legacy. I'm going to build something that will last." Sirius looked at him, his gray eyes shining with love. "I know you will, Harry. I know you will." As the summer drew to a close, Harry stood in the training ground, surrounded by the ghosts of his past and the promise of his future. He had reclaimed his parents' legacy. He had found his family. And he was ready to face whatever came next. He looked up at the stars, their light twinkling down on him like 1,000 tiny blessings. Somewhere out there, his parents were watching him. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that they were proud of him. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for everything." The stars twinkled in response, and Harry smiled. He was home. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9, Secrets Left by Lily. The door to Lily's private laboratory was smaller than Harry had expected, barely tall enough for him to pass through without ducking, hidden behind a tapestry in the manor's east wing that depicted a phoenix rising from flames. He'd walked past it a dozen times without noticing, too distracted by the grandeur of the manor's more obvious treasures. It was only when Topsy mentioned it in passing. "Mistress Lily's room, Master Harry, she always said it was for you when you were ready," that Harry had stopped in his tracks and asked to be shown. Now he stood at the threshold, his hand on the worn wooden frame, and felt the ring on his finger pulse with a warmth that he'd come to recognize as his mother's magic. The laboratory had been sealed for 10 years, waiting for him. Waiting for the moment he was ready to receive what she'd left behind. "Are you all right, Harry?" Sirius asked from behind him. "We can wait if you need a moment." Harry shook his head. "I'm ready. I've been waiting my whole life for this." He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The laboratory was smaller than he'd imagined, a single room, perhaps 15 feet across, with a high ceiling and windows that looked out onto the garden. The walls were lined with shelves, packed with jars and vials and books that seemed to hum with their own inner light. A large worktable dominated the center of the room, covered in papers and instruments that had been left exactly as Lily had placed them 10 years ago. And everywhere, there was evidence of her brilliance. Harry walked slowly through the room, touching things gently, as if they might crumble to dust at his touch. He picked up a journal from the worktable and opened it, his breath catching as he recognized his mother's handwriting. Experiment 347, attempting to stabilize the Wolfsbane potion for longer-term effectiveness. The current formulation only lasts through the lunar cycle. I believe that with the addition of moonstone essence and a reduction in the aconite concentration, I can extend the duration to cover the entire week leading up to the full moon. Harry's eyes widened. His mother had been working on improving the Wolfsbane potion, the potion that allowed werewolves like Remus to keep their minds during the transformation. She had been trying to help Remus, to make his life easier, to give him more freedom. "Look at this," Harry said, showing the journal to Sirius. She was trying to help Remus. Sirius's expression was soft, sad. She always did that. She was always trying to help people, to make things better. That's who she was. Harry continued reading, his heart swelling with love for a mother he'd never truly known. The journals were filled with notes on potions, on healing magic, on protective enchantments that he'd never even heard of. Lily Potter had been a genius, a witch of extraordinary talent and compassion, and she'd left all of her knowledge to her son. But it was the second journal that truly took Harry's breath away. It was bound in leather the color of dried blood, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was different from the other journals, smaller, more precise, almost obsessive in its detail. Harry opened it carefully, and his eyes widened at the contents. Ancient Protective Magic, a study of the blood wards and their origins. Your mother was researching blood magic, Sirius said, reading over Harry's shoulder. That's incredibly rare. Most wizards consider it dark magic. Harry shook his head. She wasn't doing dark magic. She was studying it. Trying to understand how it worked so she could use it to protect people. He turned the pages, reading quickly. Lily had documented everything. The history of blood wards, the theory behind them, the practical applications that could be used for protection rather than harm. She had even developed her own variations, adaptations that she believed could be used to create unbreakable shields against dark magic. Look at this, Harry said, pointing to a section near the end of the journal. She developed a protection spell that's keyed to love. To the love of a parent for a child. She says it's the most powerful kind of magic there is. Sirius's face was pale. That's what she did, Harry. That's what she did that night. She died to protect you, and her love created a shield that Voldemort's curse couldn't break. Harry nodded, tears pricking at his eyes. She sacrificed herself for me. She gave her life so I could live. She loved you more than anything, Harry. More than her own life. Harry closed the journal and pressed it to his chest, feeling his mother's presence all around him. She had been extraordinary, brilliant, compassionate, fiercely protective. And she had left him the keys to her knowledge, hoping that one day he would be ready to use it. The next few weeks were consumed by Harry's study of his mother's journals. He spent hours in the laboratory every day, reading through her notes, trying to understand the theories and experiments she documented. It wasn't easy. The magic she was working with was advanced, far beyond what a first-year Hogwarts student should be able to comprehend. But Harry was determined. He had to understand. He had to honor her legacy. Sirius helped when he could, explaining concepts that Harry struggled with, offering context for the experiments Lily had conducted. Remus joined them sometimes, his face pale as he read Lily's notes on the wolfsbane potion, his eyes filled with tears. "She was trying to help me," Remus said one evening, his voice thick with emotion. "Even when I was too proud to ask for help, she was trying to make my life easier." "She loved you," Harry said simply. "You were her friend." Remus nodded, unable to speak. But the most important discovery came when Harry found a hidden compartment in the bottom of the worktable. It was sealed with a charm that had been keyed to his blood, the same charm his mother had used on the will and the memory vials. When Harry pressed his finger to the seal, it dissolved, revealing a small, leather-bound book that was unlike anything else in the laboratory. It was labeled simply, "For Harry's eyes only." Harry opened it, his heart pounding. The first page was filled with his mother's handwriting, small, precise, and filled with an urgency that made Harry's blood run cold. "My dearest Harry," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then you have found the true secret of my laboratory, the knowledge that I could not trust to anyone else, not even your father. I am writing this in the weeks after your first birthday, when the war is at its darkest and I am more afraid than I have ever been in my life. There is something I have discovered that changes everything. Something about the prophecy that was made about you, about the war, about the role you are meant to play in it all. I have found evidence that the prophecy was not just a prediction, it was a manipulation. Someone created it, or at the very least, someone twisted it to serve their own purposes. I don't know who did it, Harry. I don't know if it was Voldemort or someone else entirely. But I know that the prophecy was used to divide our world, to create a weapon that could be used to control you. And I am terrified that I won't be there to protect you when the time comes. Pay attention to the people around you, Harry. Trust your instincts. There are those who will try to use you, to shape you into their own vision of what you should be. Do not let them. You are your own person, and your choices are what will define you." Harry read the letter 3 times, his mind reeling. The prophecy was a manipulation? Someone had created it, had twisted it to serve their own purposes? But who? And why? He turned the page, hoping for more answers, but the rest of the book was filled with technical notes, experiments, theories, and research that Harry didn't fully understand. His mother had left him the evidence, but she hadn't left him the solution. She had trusted him to find it on his own. "I will," Harry whispered. "I promise." The nights were the hardest. Harry would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything he'd learned. His mother had been researching the prophecy, trying to uncover its origins. She had believed it was a manipulation, a tool created by someone who wanted to control Harry's destiny. And she had died before she could finish her investigation. But she had left him clues. She had left him the evidence. And Harry was determined to follow where she had led. He began to study the prophecy more carefully, reading through the notes his mother had left. The original prophecy had been made by Sybil Trelawney, a seer who had been in the employ of Dumbledore at the time. But Lily's research suggested that Trelawney had been under a spell when she made the prophecy, a spell that had forced her to speak words that were not her own. If that was true, then someone had orchestrated the entire thing. Someone had created the prophecy to manipulate events, to create a hero who could be controlled. Harry thought about the implications. If the prophecy was a manipulation, then Voldemort's attack on him had been a manipulation too. Someone had wanted Voldemort to target the Potters. Someone had wanted Harry to become the boy who lived. But who? And why? The answers wouldn't come easily, but Harry was patient. He would keep searching, keep studying, keep digging until he found the truth. One evening, Sirius found him in the laboratory, surrounded by books and journals, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Harry, you need to rest," Sirius said gently. "You've been at this for hours." "I can't rest." Harry's voice was hoarse. "My mother left me this, she left me everything she knew, and I need to understand it. I need to find the truth." Sirius sat down beside him, his gray eyes soft with understanding. "I know how you feel. After your parents died, I spent months trying to understand what had happened. I read every book, interrogated every witness, tore apart every piece of evidence. But it wasn't until I stopped searching and started thinking that I finally understood." Harry looked up at him. "What did you understand?" "That the truth isn't always in the details." Sirius's voice was gentle. "Sometimes it's in the patterns. The connections. The things that don't add up." He paused. "Your mother was brilliant, Harry. She saw patterns that no one else could see. She believed the prophecy was a manipulation because she saw the connections that others missed. Trust her instincts. Trust your own instincts." Harry nodded slowly. "You're right. I've been so focused on the details that I haven't been looking at the bigger picture." "What does the bigger picture tell you?" Harry was silent for a long moment, thinking. The prophecy was made to create a hero. Someone who would be powerful enough to defeat Voldemort. But if the prophecy was a manipulation, then someone wanted that hero to exist. Someone wanted Harry Potter to become the boy who lived. Exactly. Sirius's eyes were bright. And that means someone has been pulling the strings from the very beginning. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Who? I don't know. But I think your mother suspected. I think she was close to finding out the truth when she died. Harry looked down at the journals on the table, at the evidence of his mother's brilliance and determination. She had been so close. She had been on the verge of uncovering something huge, something that could have changed everything. And now it was up to him to finish what she had started. The next morning, Harry woke with a new sense of purpose. He went to the laboratory early, before anyone else was awake, and began to organize his mother's notes. He sorted them by date, by subject, by importance, creating a system that would help him see the connections she'd been trying to make. It took hours, but by the end of the day, Harry had a clear picture of his mother's research. She had been investigating the origins of the prophecy, tracking down every lead, interviewing every witness. She had documented everything in meticulous detail, leaving a trail that Harry could follow. And at the very end of her notes, she had left a list of names, people she believed might have been involved in the manipulation of the prophecy. Harry read the list, his heart pounding. Most of the names were unfamiliar to him, but one stood out. Albus Dumbledore. Harry closed his eyes, trying to process what he'd just discovered. His mother had suspected Dumbledore. She had believed that the man who was supposed to be protecting Harry might be the one who had orchestrated everything. But why? What could Dumbledore possibly gain from creating a prophecy that would lead to Voldemort's defeat? The answer came to Harry like a flash of lightning. Power. Dumbledore had gained power from the prophecy. He had become the leader of the Order of the Phoenix, the driving force behind the war against Voldemort. He had used the prophecy to unite the wizarding world, to position himself as the only person who could defeat the Dark Lord. And if the prophecy was a manipulation, then Dumbledore had been the one pulling the strings all along. Harry felt sick. He had trusted Dumbledore. He had believed in the old wizard's kindness, his wisdom, his desire to protect Harry. But now he knew the truth, or at least part of the truth. Dumbledore had been using him, manipulating him, shaping him into the person he wanted Harry to become. "I won't let you," Harry whispered. "I won't let you control me." The discovery changed everything. Harry began to question everything he thought he knew. The prophecies, the wars, the politics, it had all been engineered by someone who was playing a long game that Harry was only beginning to understand. But he wasn't going to let them win. He was going to fight back. He was going to find the truth, expose the manipulation, and reclaim his own destiny. Sirius and Remus were supportive, though they struggled to accept the implications. "I've known Dumbledore for decades," Remus said, his voice troubled. "He's always been a good man. A wise man. I can't believe he would do something like this." "People do terrible things for the right reasons," Harry said. "My mother believed Dumbledore was involved. I trust her judgment." Remus was silent for a long moment. "So do I," he finally said. "Lily was never wrong about people. If she suspected Dumbledore, then there was a reason." Harry nodded, grateful for the support. He knew that uncovering the truth would be difficult, that it would mean confronting people he had once trusted. But he was ready. He had to be ready. His mother had believed in him. His father had trusted him. And Harry was going to prove them right. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, James' Legacy. The door to James Potter's private vault was hidden behind a portrait of a young man with messy black hair and a mischievous grin. James himself, painted in the full flush of youth, his eyes twinkling with a humor that made Harry's heart ache every time he passed by. "Password?" the portrait asked, its painted eyes fixed on Harry with an intensity that was almost unsettling. "I don't know the password," Harry admitted. "My father never told me." The portrait studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, it smiled. "You have his eyes. And his stubbornness." It paused. "The password is mischief managed. Your father always did have a flair for the dramatic." Harry repeated the words, and the portrait swung open, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into the depths of the manor. The stairs were lit by enchanted torches that flared to life as Harry descended, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. The vault at the bottom was smaller than Harry had expected, a single room, perhaps 20 feet across, filled with objects that seemed to hum with their own magical energy. There were books stacked in neat piles, weapons displayed on the walls, and artifacts that Harry didn't recognize, their purposes unknown. But it was the table in the center of the room that drew Harry's attention. On it lay a letter, addressed to him in his father's handwriting. Harry picked it up with trembling hands and began to read. "My dearest Harry," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found my private vault, the one place I kept my most precious possessions. I'm sorry that I wasn't there to give this to you myself. I'm sorry for so many things, Harry. But most of all, I'm sorry that you had to grow up without me. I don't know what kind of person you've become. I don't know what kind of life you've lived. But I do know this: you are a Potter. And being a Potter means something. It means you have a legacy of courage, of loyalty, of love. It means you have the strength to face whatever comes your way. I have left you many things in this vault: books, weapons, artifacts that will help you on your journey. But the most important thing I have left you is something that cannot be held or touched. It is the memory of who I was, and who I wanted you to become. I was not a perfect man, Harry. I was arrogant, reckless, and sometimes foolish. But I loved your mother more than anything in the world. And I loved you even before you were born. You were my greatest achievement, my proudest moment. And I will always, always be proud of you. Be brave, Harry. Be kind. Be loyal to those who deserve your loyalty. And always, always think for yourself. Never let anyone else decide who you are meant to be." Harry finished the letter, tears streaming down his face. He pressed it to his chest, feeling his father's love radiating from the words. "I will," he whispered. "I promise." The vault was filled with treasures that Harry slowly began to explore. There were books on dueling, advanced techniques that James had developed during his time with the Marauders, strategies that had helped him survive the war. There were artifacts that had been passed down through generations, each one with its own story and purpose. There were weapons that gleamed with enchanted light, their edges sharp enough to cut through magic itself. But the most remarkable discoveries were the memories. In a small, velvet-lined box at the back of the vault, Harry found a collection of memory vials, dozens of them, each one labeled in his father's handwriting. They contained James's most precious memories, preserved so that Harry could experience them for himself. Harry picked up the first vial, labeled "The First Day of Hogwarts," and poured its contents into the pensieve that sat on the table. The world dissolved around him, and he found himself standing on the Hogwarts Express. He was young, 11 years old, the same age Harry was now. He was sitting in a compartment with a boy who Harry recognized as a young Remus Lupin, and they were both staring at a third boy who had just burst through the door. "You must be James Potter," the third boy said, his gray eyes bright with mischief. "I'm Sirius Black. I've heard all about you." James grinned, a mischievous, reckless grin that was so familiar it made Harry's heart ache. "All good things, I hope." "Of course not," Sirius laughed. "But that's what makes it interesting." The memory shifted, and Harry watched as his father and Sirius became friends, partners in crime, brothers in everything but blood. He watched them drag Remus into their adventures, watched them torment Severus Snape, watched them transform into animagi to keep Remus company during the full moon. "You're insane," Remus said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You could have been killed." "Worth it," James said simply. "You're our friend, Remus. We'd do anything for you." Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. His father had been reckless, arrogant, and sometimes cruel. But he had also been fiercely loyal, deeply loving, and willing to sacrifice everything for the people he cared about. He was exactly the kind of person Harry wanted to become. The next memory was more somber. Harry found himself in a dimly lit room, surrounded by people he recognized from the Order of the Phoenix. His parents were there, their faces grave, and Sirius and Remus were standing nearby. They were planning something, a mission perhaps, or a strategy for the war. "We can't keep doing this," Lily said, her voice tired. "We can't keep fighting without a plan. We need to know what Voldemort is planning." James nodded. "I've been trying to find out. But his followers are careful. They don't trust anyone. Except Peter," Sirius said bitterly. "Peter trusts everyone." The room fell silent. Harry watched as the tension between the four friends, James, Sirius, Remus, and a plump, rat-faced man he'd never seen before, seemed to thicken. "We can trust Peter," James said finally. "He's one of us. He's been with us from the beginning." Sirius shook his head. "I don't trust him. I never have. There's something about him that doesn't add up." "Sirius, stop." Lily's voice was sharp. "Peter is our friend. He's proved his loyalty 100 times over." Sirius was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Fine. But if he ever betrays us, if he ever puts Harry in danger, I'll kill him myself." Harry watched the memory with a sense of dread. He knew how this story ended. Peter Pettigrew had betrayed his parents. He had sold them out to Voldemort, and they had died because of it. But as Harry watched the memory, he noticed something he hadn't expected. James was watching Peter with an expression that wasn't trust, it was calculation. He was weighing something, making a decision. And in that moment, Harry realized that his father had known. He had known that Peter was a liability. He had known that the secret keeper might not be safe. And he had done something about it. But what? The memory faded, and Harry was back in the vault, his heart pounding. He had to find out what his father had done. He had to know the truth. He found the answer in a hidden compartment at the bottom of the memory box. Inside was a letter, addressed to Sirius, but never sent. Harry opened it with trembling hands and began to read. "Sirius," the letter began. "I know you don't trust Peter. And I know you're right to be suspicious. There's something about him that I can't quite put my finger on, something that makes me uneasy. But I can't prove anything. Not yet. Which is why I'm writing this letter. I need you to know that I've made a decision. I've decided to make you the secret keeper for the Fidelius charm. Not Peter. You. I know we discussed using Peter as a decoy, but I've changed my mind. It's too dangerous. If Peter is the secret keeper and he's compromised, we're all dead. So I'm going to switch the secret keeper without telling anyone, not even Lily. Only you and I will know the truth. If something happens to me, Sirius, I need you to find this letter. I need you to tell Harry the truth. And I need you to protect him, no matter what it costs." Harry finished the letter, his mind spinning. His father had made Sirius the secret keeper. He had trusted Sirius with his family's safety, and Sirius had never betrayed that trust. But Peter had somehow become the secret keeper anyway, and that meant someone had interfered. Someone had changed the Fidelius charm without James's knowledge. But who? Harry thought about his mother's research, about the manipulation of the prophecy, about the conspiracy that had been unfolding for years. Someone had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. Someone had wanted James and Lily dead. And that someone had known about the switch. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. This was bigger than Dumbledore. Bigger than the Ministry. Someone had been orchestrating everything, the prophecy, the war, the deaths of Harry's parents, and they had been doing it for decades. But who? And why? The next few days were consumed by Harry's search for answers. He went through his father's vault with a fine-tooth comb, looking for anything that might shed light on the mystery. He found letters, journals, and artifacts that told the story of James's life, his childhood, his time at Hogwarts, his role in the war. But there was no mention of anyone who might have been pulling the strings. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, Harry turned to the most personal item in the vault, a small, leather-bound journal that James had kept during the final months of his life. "Dear Harry," the first entry began. "I'm writing this because I want you to know the truth. I want you to know what kind of world you're being born into, and what your mother and I are fighting for." The journal was filled with James's thoughts on the war, on his friends, on his family. He wrote about his fears for Harry's future, his hopes for a better world, his determination to protect the people he loved. But near the end of the journal, Harry found something that made his blood run cold. "Lily told me something today. Something that made my blood run cold. She said she's been researching the prophecy, and she's found evidence that it might have been manipulated. She said she thinks someone created it, someone who wanted to control the war and the people involved in it. I don't know who she suspects. She wouldn't tell me. But she's scared, Harry. More scared than I've ever seen her. She said we need to be careful. She said we need to trust no one. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to trust. But I know one thing, I will protect you, Harry. I will protect you with my life." Harry closed the journal, his heart aching. His parents had known. They had known that something was wrong, that someone was manipulating events. They had tried to fight back, but they had run out of time. And now it was up to Harry to finish what they had started. The final discovery in James's vault was the most precious of all. At the very back of the vault, hidden behind a stack of books, Harry found a small, wooden box. It was unassuming, plain and simple, with no markings to indicate what it contained. But when Harry opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them, all moving, all filled with people who had been important to his parents. There were pictures of James and Lily on their wedding day, of Sirius and Remus laughing at some private joke, of a baby Harry being held by his mother, his father looking on with pride. And at the bottom of the box, a single photograph that made Harry's eyes fill with tears. It was a picture of his parents, sitting in the garden at Godric's Hollow, holding hands and smiling at the camera. Lily was pregnant, heavily pregnant, her hand resting on her belly as she beamed at James. And James was looking at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated love. "This is us," James had written on the back of the photograph. "Your mother and me, waiting for you to arrive. We already loved you, Harry. We already loved you more than anything in the world." Harry pressed the photograph to his chest, tears streaming down his face. His parents had loved him. They had loved him so much that they had given their lives for him. And now, finally, he had the proof, the evidence of that love, preserved in a box that had been waiting for him for 10 years. "I'll make you proud," he whispered. "I promise." Sirius found him in the vault hours later, surrounded by photographs and letters, his eyes red from crying. Harry, are you all right? Harry looked up at him, his expression fierce. I found something. Something important. Sirius knelt beside him, his gray eyes filled with concern. What did you find? Harry handed him the letter that James had written to Sirius, the one that revealed the truth about the Fidelius charm. My father made you the secret keeper, he said. Not Peter. You. He trusted you with our families. Safety. Sirius read the letter, his face going pale. He switched the secret keeper. He didn't tell anyone, not even Lily. Someone else knew, Harry said. Someone changed the charm. Someone made Peter the secret keeper instead of you. And that's why my parents died. Sirius looked up at him, his eyes blazing with anger and grief. Who would do something like that? Harry shook his head. I don't know. But I'm going to find out. He paused. My parents knew someone was manipulating the war. They knew the prophecy was being used to control people. They were trying to fight back, but they ran out of time. Sirius was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Then we'll finish what they started. We'll find out who was behind this. We'll hold them accountable. Harry nodded, his heart filled with determination. His parents had trusted him. His parents had believed in him. And he wasn't going to let them down. End of chapter 10. Thank you.